Hello and welcome to the Hacking HR Technical and Digital Transformation Summit Day 3. This is the personalization at scale using technology to create individualized employee experiences panel. And I am so excited to be here hosting you today. My name is Jill Katz, and I am the founder of Assemble. Assemble is a one-stop shop of HR experts, and we offer offsites, fractional HR work, coaching, and amazing strategic work to help organizations put people forward first. I am excited to bring on an amazing panel of colleagues. You can bring them all in now. And Lara's coming in. Excellent. Welcome.
Hi, Jill. How are you?
Excellent. We are going to have an amazing time today. I'm so excited. We are going to start off with some quick intros, and then we're going to play a little game. But first, I would like to just ask each person to tell us really quickly who you are and what you do. We're going to start with Olga.
Good morning. My name is Olga, and I am a people leader at YCharts. And I have been with the company for a few years, and I can tell you that my most important.
Oh, Olga's frozen. We'll give her a second. Olga, are you back?
I am. I'm sorry. I froze.
Oh, you're frozen again. We're going to give Olga a minute to get her technology working, and we're going to jump to Candy.
Good morning. I am Candy Gongora, and I am with Goodway Group. We are a marketing services company. I've been with them almost 9 years, and I am so excited to be here with all of you.
Candy, welcome. Mel, welcome.
Hi there, and afternoon for me. I'm based in the UK, and I'm a global people partner at a company called Udacity, and they are upskilling the workforces. So in the EdTech space, definitely check them out.
Awesome. Thanks, Mel. Lara, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Lara. I'm calling in from Nigeria. I currently work with Flour Mills of Nigeria as the head of HR. We are a food manufacturing company, and I've been with them for about 6 years. Prior to then, I was with Accenture Nigeria for 11 years. I'm a design thinking expert. I'm a coach. And I'm really passionate about executive coaching in the area of human resources and HR strategy. Thank you.
Wonderful. Olga, we're coming back to you to give you another try. Hopefully your technology is back.
Let's see if it works. Well, I am Olga Spivak. I'm really excited to be here, and I work at YCharts, so we focus on building culture rooted in accountability as a part of our team. And I'm super excited to be here because design thinking, anything technology and people intersection related is certainly a passion of mine. So I'm really honored to be here with this empowering group of people today. So thank you.
Wonderful. Well, Olga, right now we hear your sound, which is great, but your video is still frozen. So hopefully we'll figure that up. Now you're back. We see you. So that's great. All right. Well, we are excited to have you all here today. We're going to start off with a game because we want everyone to get to know our panel really well. So I like to call this a speed round, and I'll call your name out. And the idea is to answer the question as quickly as you can. Okay. The question is coffee or tea? Coffee or tea? Mel?
Coffee.
Lara?
Tea.
Olga?
Coffee.
Candy?
Coffee.
Okay, we're more of a coffee crew. The next question is mountains or ocean? Olga?
Mountains.
Candy?
Ocean.
Mel?
Ocean.
Lara?
Ocean.
Oh wow, we only have one mountains person. I'm also a mountains person. I will say, Olga, I'm with you. Okay, this is a good one. Unlimited snacks or unlimited naps? Snacks or naps? Lara.
Naps.
Mel.
Naps.
Andy.
Snacks.
Olga.
Naps.
Okay. Who do you text most often? Olga.
My daughter.
Mel.
And my husband.
Lara.
My husband.
Candy.
Husband.
Okay. All right. I have two more. Would you rather change the past or see the future? Candy.
See the future.
Olga.
Definitely see the future.
Mel.
Oh, I'm not a fan of either. I don't like tampering with that kind of stuff. So I'll see the future.
Okay, Lara.
See the future. I'm forward thinking. Thank you.
Okay. And our last question. What superpower would you like to have? Mel.
Ooh, ability to travel, like instantly be in another location.
Okay. Olga.
Being able to be everywhere at once to get more things done.
Ooh, Candy.
I would like to. I'd like to be able to read minds because sometimes that's helpful.
No kidding. Lara.
I want money to be able to solve lots of problems and live a very good life.
Nice, nice. Well, it is so good to get to know you. I knew it would be fun to play a little game. And I will say we have a very active crew joining us today. They're playing the game along with us. And we've got people here today from North Carolina, Poland, New York City, Seattle, Germany, Hungary, Texas, Denmark, Michigan, Hong Kong, Ukraine, Downington, Pennsylvania, Canada, Pakistan. So it's just wonderful to see so many people. And Deborah Grunfeld, it's so good to see you. I'm so excited that you're here. So my gosh, this chat is super busy and I will do my best to keep up with the chat and the people on our panel. And we are going to dig right in. So first of all, today we're talking about personalization at scale. So why don't I jump in with a really important question just to start us off. Mel, would you tell us what personalization means in the first place?
I think it's about crafting an individual experience for somebody in a very high level overview, but making sure that it pertains to what that person is looking for, but around, understanding that specific individual needs and experiences.
Wonderful and nice and simple, which I think is a great way for us to jump in. So thank you. Olga, why does personalization matter in today's workplace and how does it impact engagement, retention, and overall business?
Great question. Thank you. I think employees now expect more of a tailored experiences at work, kind of mirroring the consumer expectations, if you would. When it's done well, Personalization really increases engagement, retention, and performance. And I can give you a specific example. My team has built an HR brain. It's an AI assistant that delivers personalized HR answers 24/7 to our team. And it definitely empowers our employees. Um, to be free to focus on different areas while we as an HR team can focus on strategic work, but our team has access to our HR brain 24/7. And fun fact, Deloitte found that 71% of employees who received personalized experiences are more engaged. And engagement strongly correlates with productivity. And as we all know, it leads to profitability as well.
That's incredible. I would love to have an HR brain. I can't imagine how helpful it would be. And when I think about starting my own HR career 25 years ago, not to age myself because I'm only 22, but right, imagine that. But it would have been such a completely different experience to have access to that type of intelligence. So that's really exciting. Mel, what are the biggest shifts you've seen in employee expectations around these types of individualized experiences?
I think it's around expectation. Employees expect a continuous, customized, not one size fits all solution for things. Their onboarding, using AI bots to point to Confluence pages. Like they want technology to almost predict what they need. So we're having to move at a really fast pace to try and keep up with the expectations that are coming through to us with this technology.
Yeah. And Candy, what would you add to that in terms of what you've seen in shifts for employees?
I think one shift is our career path. We were so used to the career ladders, and now there's truly journeys. So everybody has a different type of journey based on their role, based on their goals and what they want to do. And so I think that's another shift we have to manage, as well as lifestyle or where you are in your life. Like what I want maybe for myself at work and my career, or even how I want to be recognized, is different than some of the newer generations coming into the workforce. And so those are some other things that we have to be mindful of.
It's so different how now there is as much of a service expectation from employees as there is from the company when the relationship starts between employee and organization. Lara, what risks or unintended consequences should HR leaders be mindful of, however, when implementing personalization at scale?
Yes, so given the input we've heard from Mel and Candy, that speaks to the desires of employees who have their own expectations. There are a couple of risks associated with it. So number one risk that I see is the risk of bias and discrimination. So whilst we are trying to understand different employees and categorize them so that we can individualize our benefits, there's a risk that those that are usually underrepresented or those that are in the minority might be omitted. So that's one risk. Another risk that I see is having to box people up. So based on the data that HR is working on, we sort of just box people and say, oh, based on who you are, your persona, this is what I have that I believe you want. And that sort of restricts employees. It doesn't give them a lot of options to choose from. It doesn't give them opportunity to express and pick out other things innovatively. And one final risk that I see is a risk of data privacy. So in the bid for us to be able to personalize, we need data. We need data for insight. We need data for information. We need data to be able to use to design whatever we are designing at scale for them. But that also poses a risk of having too much information about employees, which might lead to data security issues. I'll stop at those three risks for now. Thank you.
Those are three pretty legitimate risks: bias and discrimination, boxing people, and data privacy. What thoughts do you have, Lara, on any of the three, and what might be done to mitigate any of those risks?
What we can do to mitigate those risks, first and foremost, is having the right policies in place, right? So policies around data privacy that speaks to the NDPR or Global Data Privacy Regulations, and ensuring that we get the consent of employees. If you're going to use their data for whatever information, candidates, please get their consent in line with the regulatory data that is available for us. Another way we can mitigate the risk around biases, okay? It's giving them multiple options, even though while you're designing, you want to personalize, but you also give them multiple options to give them opportunity to look at other ways which might also fit into their preference. And then finally, another way to mitigate the risk around boxing people is just giving, interacting with them, engaging them, asking them, what do you want? How, getting to know their preference, then design your benefit and skill based on what their preference or based on the input that you received for them. I think with those 3 points, you're able to mitigate most of the risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Lara. Thank you so much. Candy, how do you respond to leaders who see personalization as a nice to have rather than a business priority?
I think we have to connect it back to the business. And so what's important? Results, right? And so I think Olga mentioned in the beginning about I think Deloitte, the study, right, where if it's more personalized, then they're more engaged. And then, Gallup always tells us that if they're more engaged, then, that does increase your profitability. I can't remember the latest percentage, but I know the last time I checked, it was around 21% more profits if they're engaged. So if you can connect it back to the results that matter to the leaders, then you can really show that it's not just a nice to have, it is actually a need to have. And a very simple way is just to ask for a test. Like, let's do a test of 2 groups and let's see what the difference is on the engagement, and even tie back like the engagement to the client experience. So the employees who are more engaged, are we seeing a direct correlation to the client experience and the client engagement? And I think those are a couple of ways to help our leaders see that it really does make an impact to business. It's not just another HR program.
I love the idea of a test. I often, when working with my clients at Assemble, recommend a test for almost anything that you want to prove to the business, because there's very, very little risk to a test. And it's a great way to try something out and to learn a lot. So that's a really great recommendation. Also, Candy, I love your background. I can't move forward without saying that.
Thank you.
It's just fabulous. Okay, and Olga, a last question about the business case for personalization. Is there a generational component to this demand in your eyes? Like, are Gen Z and millennials driving this shift in your mind more than other generations?
Yes. So Gen Z and millennials, they're really vocal about wanting the purpose, the feedback, the growth. And baby boomers and Gen X, they also want that relevance, the flexibility, and recognition. So personalization is really about kind of the overall and all of our population. It's not just the age, because I feel like if you're in a boomer environment, now you need to find strategies of how do you keep working in a more personalized way, because in my age, that's not something that we've experienced before. And Gen Z and Gen X, they have a lot more personalization than other generations have had. So blending all of that in a workforce, it's an art and a science, and technology really helps with that. But we have to be really human around that topic and be very intentional. So that's where I feel like it's a perfect intersection between technology and people expertise. So every generation can feel and be seen in the organizations.
So important to call out, Olga, how we need to be human as we interact with technology. I really like that. And a nice comment from Kathy Eastwood on LinkedIn, who was commenting, Candy, on what you said. She says, profitability is directly attributed to people first strategies because employee engagement increases retention, productivity, innovation, which then improves customer satisfaction to buy more and refer, which then drives 23% increased profitability overall. So thank you, Kathy Eastwood, for your comment. Our comments are yes, that's right, are super active. So anyone who in our participant comment list, if you have any questions you'd like me to ask or answer, let me know. Let's move on to the how. So leveraging technology to drive personalization. Lara, what are some of the most effective technologies, AI, HRIS, predictive analytics, that are being used to personalize employee experience?
Thanks for that great question. So I would say that technology is just an enabler. The effectiveness of the technology is linked to the goal, the outcome, the result that you want to achieve as you personalize employees' experience. Technology just only helps you to bring the experience to employees. So I won't be able to identify one as being more effective. It's tied to what you're trying to achieve. For instance, predictive analytics, it would help you to identify proactively areas based on the data that you have that you can come up with initiative to personalize employees' experience. AI too as well can help. For instance, with AI, you can predict the benefit that will suit a particular persona as compared to the others. With HRIS, you can come up with chatbots that can help you address routine HR tasks, wherein it enables your employee to engage in a more personalized way. So it's really directly linked to what you're trying to achieve, the goal you want to achieve, the result and the outcome that you want as you personalize your employees' experience.
Thank you, Lara. That's a great suggestion. We have a LinkedIn user that's also calling out Google Translate. So for that person, that's a big help. Mel, can you share a real world example of how your organization has successfully used technology to personalize employee experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I ran a project back where I partnered with a company called LRN, and we rewrote our code of conduct. And what we did was we mapped role risk to the content, which meant that depending on what kind of role you did in the business, you had a personalized pathway delivering specified content just that was relevant to you. It was a huge amount of work, but it was highly impactful because it meant that people no longer had that one size fits all content. They actually had a personalized pathway that was really pertinent to what they needed to understand to be effective in their role and to reduce risk for the business. So it was an incredible project, well received, and definitely big up to LRN because they were great partners.
What was the feedback and reaction impact that you got from that project in your organization?
So what it meant was that some of our slightly more junior staff didn't have to sit through sort of a 2 to 3 hour training. So they got time back. We also implemented test out options as well, which meant that our more senior or our more tenured staff could just skip the content and demonstrate their ability through testing out, which meant that, again, they saved time. So whilst that was one of our goals and priorities, it was also about making sure that the content was personalized as well. So there was definitely more of an understanding that they no longer had to learn about things that truly weren't relevant for their role, depending on the risk appetite of the content that they were doing within the business.
That's fantastic.
If they didn't have access to a device, they didn't have a team that they were managing, their risk was really quite low, from a code of conduct perspective. So they really didn't need to be spending such a large amount of time regularly going through that level of content. So it was definitely very well received.
So cool. I'd love to hear from someone else that has an example of how you may have successfully used technology in your organization or with an organization you've worked with.
I can jump in here really quick too. I can talk a little bit about the HR brain that we've created for our organization. And based on my calculation, it actually reduced 33% of repetitive type of questions for our team. So having that time back for a very small, nimble team became a real game changer in our space. So now we do have an opportunity to become even more human and play with technology. How can we leverage that to make a difference? But also, how can we save time for everybody by using our HR brain?
That's fabulous. I'm really, as you can tell, Olga, I'm really excited about the HR brain.
You do.
I know, that's so great. Lara, where do you see the balance between automation and human touch? How do we ensure that technology enhances rather than diminishes authentic human interactions?
So where I say the balance for me is with design thinking, and I would explain. When we talk about design thinking helps you to balance by providing solutions in an innovative way through the use of empathy. That way, your solution is not just tilted only to just technology and minimizing the people part, but rather it intersects at 3 points. The first point is human centric, where you apply empathy as you're designing your personalized experience or solution. The other bit is the business side, which is the viability. How does this link to the overall business goal? Like Candy mentioned earlier, what are we trying to achieve as a business? How does this translate to productivity? How does this improve engagement and retention and performance? So there is that business viability aspect. And then the third intersect for me is the visibility, which is technology. What exactly are we using technology? What exactly are we automating? How are we ensuring there's balance based on what we've just heard? Like Olga mentioned, there's buyback in time. That is value. So that balance has to come from the concept of design thinking, where you're looking at it from those three angles. You're looking at the people part, is it what the people want? You're looking at the business, does it translate to an outcome? And then technology as the intersect of it. So for me, it would be using design thinking concept. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Candy, how do you handle personalization in a hybrid or global workforce where norms and expectations are so different?
Yes, I think it goes into like how whatever tool you're using, how you train it, or how you, you could actually even go back to the design thinking that Laura just mentioned, where you take that into consideration as you're looking through what you're going to do, is like the different cultures and like where are your employees located, and making sure that whatever tool you're using, it's aware, it's trained in that. I think also understanding from the person who is designing or deciding the process and then picking the tool is really understanding the different cultures and the different preferences from your global employees. If you haven't lived there or spent time there or spending time with even the employees there, it's going to be very hard to design something. So I just definitely think those are things you need to be aware of, versus kind of like what we've talked about here. You can't just go get a tool and then just say, let's just put it out there. There's definitely some thought and experience and true knowledge that needs to go into that.
It's almost that we need to personalize the personalization.
Yes, that's a great way to say it. Yes. Mhm.
So that was really helpful conversation about driving this initiative. And now let's talk about some of the challenges that might be there, because I'm sure we have a lot of people listening that are thinking, wow, I'd really love to do this, but I'm not doing it now, or I'm doing it just a little bit. And how do I get this going for my organization or the people that I work with? So Mel, what are some of the biggest challenges that HR leaders face when implementing personalized employee experiences at scale?
Yeah, I think kind of those big ticket items, data privacy, security, ensuring that personalization doesn't infringe on employee trust or compliance standards, because we are working with so many around the world. GDPR is the big known one, but you've got CCPA, same in India, Japan. There are so many considerations. I've been following quite closely the use of AI within interviews actually is going to be banned in Europe. It's not going to be allowed because of the privacy element to it. So whilst everyone's kind of full steam ahead with rolling out these great technologies and initiatives to try and make things quicker, easier, and more unbiased, to remove that unconscious unbiased, we're still going to hit those hurdles of data privacy, security, and that trust piece from the employees as well and candidates. So trying to balance that whilst full steam ahead with technology, I think, is definitely going to be something we need to navigate very carefully.
Thank you. And one of the most important questions that we always have to ask in HR, Olga, how can organizations measure the ROI? What are the metrics that matter the most when it comes to personalization?
Yeah, we're actually a very data-driven team. So I love this question because I think tracking leading indicators like the actual tool usage, engagement scores, and internal mobility, they can these metrics can really link that to retention, to the manager effectiveness, to productivity. It can also help us calculate the cost savings from automation. And as I alluded before, like count how many repetitive inquiries we have. So I think it definitely helps to track a lot of metrics, but overall, it goes back to employee net promoter score, because we do want to make every single employee feel and be seen and see how they leverage the tools and what that means for the organization's bottom line.
Employee net promoter score, so important. Well, it is unbelievable. Our conversation has been so much fun, and it has gone so fast that we actually only have 4.5 minutes left, which is just enough time to ask one more question and each person give 1 minute of advice before we get cut off. So my question is for all of you, and I'll ask each one of you to share one piece of advice for making personalization at scale a reality in the organization for HR leaders. What is the advice you would give? Lara.
My advice to everyone is the need for us to unlearn, relearn, and upscale. As the world of work continues to evolve, there's a need for us to challenge ourselves to upskill in relevant skills that enable us to deliver more value to our people as we personalize that skill. Thank you.
Nice and fast. Thank you so much, Mel.
I think just always starting with listening deeply to your employees. I think personalization at scale is most successful when built around genuine understanding of your employees' needs and experiences.
Candy.
Building on what Mel said, like once you find out what's most important to your employees, look at your employee journey, your life cycle, right? And figure out what's the most impactful moment. Take a small little moment and then go test that. I think that will make the biggest difference.
Olga.
Similar to what everyone said, I think start with intentional micro personalization and look at the entire employee journey. I'll use an instance like onboarding and be a little bit repetitive here. What would make this feel more human, useful, and empowering to that specific individual? Because now personalization is kind of a must and not a want.
Personalization is a must and not a want. That is absolutely fabulous. Well, this was such a fun conversation with four incredible experts. I know I learned a ton because I'm not an expert on this topic, but it was so much fun to learn from you. And I hope you all had a great time. It really went fast. And even in our chat, we're saying we can't believe how fast this time flew by. It is interesting. Mafika Magongo, one of our participants, just said HR tech isn't about replacing humans with bots. It's about using digital tools to amplify human potential. And I think that is just such a beautiful way to summarize what we talked about today. This was a great discussion. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to this incredible group of participants and audience members that kept chatting the entire time. You kept me busy. And it was wonderful to meet all of you. Wishing everyone a great rest of your day and a wonderful summit. Definitely tune in to Hacking HR for the rest of this digital conversation. There is more to come. And wishing everyone a safe and healthy day.
Thank you. Thanks for doing a
Thank
great
you,
job
everyone.
hosting, Jill.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You did
Jill.
Bye.
amazing.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are in the world. We're so glad to have you here with us at the HR Technology and Digital Transformation Summit. This session is the role of HR in driving digital transformation, positioning HR as a leader in organizational change. And I am your host and moderator, Lauren Lefkowitz, for this session. I am an executive coach and fractional HR officer. And I love HR. It's my favorite place to be. I'm so excited to have our panelists join the stage. And as they're joining, I would love to invite you, those of you who are watching, to give us your comments, your thoughts, your insights, ask your questions as you go along the way. I caught the tail end of the last session, and I heard that this was a super active audience, and I love that for us. So panelists, welcome in. So glad to have you here. And let's just go in the order we are on the screen. And if you could introduce yourself, tell us your name, where in the world you are, what your specialty is in HR, and why this topic in particular is important to you.
I believe that's me first. Welcome, everybody, and hello for the panel. Looking forward to this discussion. My name is Tekla Sabo. I'm calling from the Netherlands, from Europe. So it's a late afternoon here, and I believe for many of you it's in the morning. I'm working for TomTom, which is a company that providing location service and online maps for other businesses. I'm head of People Essentials, so overseeing all HR products through the life journey at employment for all employees, from onboarding to the end until someone exiting. And I'm leading a product-driven, product-led HR team.
Hi, I'm Charmaine, and I built my career in HR and now have my own consultancy called Chapter 2, where we focus on optimizing organizations, people, and processes.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. This is Sudhir Singh. I'm joining from San Francisco. I have over 20 years of experience in global HR. As of now, I am CEO of ProOrgs, an organization focused on helping organizations scale themselves in terms of talent, people, and culture. This topic is very exciting for me, particularly given that I am an engineer by education. So when everything digital is very exciting for me. And of course, HR has a big role to play, and we are going to discuss it today with our wonderful panelists in terms of how we can play an active role there.
And finishing up, my name is Heidi. I am calling in from Zurich in Switzerland. So Tekla, same time zone. So good morning to our American colleagues. I have a background in enabling transformations. So I was either on the HR side, focusing on HR transformation, or on the business side, then focusing on really helping businesses to evolve into a more successful future. And this is why this topic just sprang to my eyes when I saw it. It was like, yeah, organizational change, and already the title is a lot of nudging for additional thoughts and discussion. So looking forward to this panel.
Wonderful. I love when our panel is actually global, it's so nice because we get to really have a worldwide perspective. So panelists, I am going to ask each of you to just come off mute when you're ready to answer a question, defer to each other, and that way we don't have to call on each other, but everybody gets to answer every question. So the first question is this. What is HR's role in fostering leadership that in an organization that becomes or is adaptable to change? How do we, as HR professionals, put ourselves in the mix as leaders and as drivers of transformational digital change in the organization?
Okay, I can go first, Chair. So, like, when we are talking about digital or technology, most of the times the people angle is forgotten because the discussion typically happens between business and IT and so on, right? And for them, people angle is not a priority at all, right? Therefore, it is critical for HR leadership to really figure out what's happening in the organization, what are they thinking in terms of digital transformation, bringing in new technology, and so on, and introduce the people angle there, and that is where it starts. So if we miss the bus there, then even if we come in later, sometimes it's a tad too late.
I would love
like
to.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, Tekla,
I
go
would
first.
Thank you. I would just, it's funny because I think the publication that first time talked about HR should sit at the table was 1997. And ever since we keep talking about it. Even yesterday with my management team, I had a conversation. We have to be at the table, at the decision making. And accordingly, like how we can get there, because I completely agree with Sudhir that we have to be there, and then it's hard because we are not always invited, is I think 2 layers. One is to how we can bring added value is either strategically with digitalization and using AI, or help the company, help the organization becoming more productive. And very often the opportunities, especially from people side or HR side, is very underutilized on strategically. We are very focused on making ourselves more productive, which very often actually leads to deliver more and do more work, but not do what we are already doing in a more productive way. And at the same time, strategically, we are lacking because often we are talking about already AI, and then the market is so overflowed with all new solutions and technology. At the same time, many companies doesn't have even one single truth of data. They don't have everything in one place. So with a basic dashboard, you cannot connect all your data points, and data is power. And that's how you can become very, very strategic using data-driven decision-making, talk about people. The people matters really with proof, as well as with predictability, leverage more predictive analytics around that, scenario planning, risk analysis, as well as using competitive intelligence, really use AI, for instance, to monitor for you what's happening in the market and be on the minute, know what your competitors are doing, as well as using for innovation and product development, using AI to look for trends, generate new ideas, or visualize that. So there is a lot of opportunities, and I believe we have to be more focusing on the strategic opportunities with digitalization and AI rather than on the productivity aspects.
I would add to that and further build on it. I think Sudhir, was what you mentioned at the beginning, just provoked some thoughts in me about like the people, the functional expertise on people. And I guess there I was thinking, is it just people? And I guess here in that session, it points us specifically to this like organizational development expertise in a way. And I think Tekla, what you brought up, these like 2 very different things that HR could cover potentially, of like operational efficiency and then visioning, strategic thinking, and really evolving an organization into the future. And this famous seat at the table, it seems like we continue looking at it and demanding it and claiming, why don't we get it as a function? And then, well, I have seen like the corporate world, and I also was a consultant. And what it always came back to was like, guys, perhaps HR people shouldn't sit there and say, we need a seat at the table, but just say, well, here is why I should sit at the table, and here is what I add to the table and can put on the table, and then like walk the talk with that one. What I saw, I was just in a discussion with different like heads HR of saying, well, we need to shift this like how HR is looked at, and also positions itself more into like business leadership. but not forgetting about the functional expertise, because that's why we are there basically. But also the head of procurement and the head of finance, they all bring it with them, and they are a business leader. And we seem to be a little bit running behind as a function as a whole, which is for me a shame to see. But I think it's much more this like skill set of saying, well, we have very strong leaders in HR who are true business leaders and have done like strategy work, etc., and hardcore strategy work, not just HR strategy, and can also deep dive into a people practice and redesign it if needed to increase operational efficiency. And that's quite like a span of a skill set that we don't see much, because I think we haven't like focusedly developed it in the past years. And now with like the digital transformation, it's like, oh guys, it would actually be a good opportunity and a necessity to step into that role fast.
Yeah. And I'd add on this is that HR's role, in my view, is really to be around adaptability and to help promote adaptable leadership. And making sure that that's the expectation, not the exception, right? And talking about that specifically around adaptable leadership, staying responsive in the face of change, right? Adjusting strategy, communication, and decision making that's based on what's happening in real time. You know, a lot of times it's, well, I think, or if the, no, what's happening in real time, being more responsive to that, you know, and that really requires more than just training. We sometimes can get over caught up in training, and it has to be more than that. We need the honest feedback loops, right? We need to be coaching leaders about being comfortable with ambiguity. We need to be coaching the organization around that, helping them, aligning incentives with behaviors, right? If I want something to change, what is the impetus for someone to want to do that, right? How are we going to be motivating them, incentivizing them, right? We always have to answer the what's in it for me, the with them for other people. And I think we have to do a better job, and also help leaders do a better job of identifying what that with them is for people, so that that can help guide what those responsive strategies are. Because really digital transformation will fail if leaders stay static. And our job is to make sure that leadership evolves as fast as the tech is evolving, or at least close to it.
Thank you. Oh, this is such a rich conversation already. We've got some amazing comments coming in as well. And I'm just going to read a couple of little points here that lead us into our next question. Andrea said, owning the people side of change. Tech is easy compared to shifting mindset. And Charmaine, you said this a little bit, like it's not about training, it's about doing the work to build that engagement and bring people in and get them to adapt, the adaptability piece, not the training piece, right? Like it is almost like the tech is easy peasy, but actually getting people to adopt it is the hard part. And then there was a question, it says LinkedIn user here. So I'm not sure who the person is, but it says the fundamental question is who owns the strategy of digital transformation, right? And that speaks, Heidi, to your point that we need to be sitting at the table. It's not a question of like, please let me in, please let me sit at the table. It's I'll come to the table and this is what I bring to it. So the next question I want us to answer is, how can HR transition from policy enforcement, the trainers, to really nurturing digital change, especially in organizations that have rigid hierarchies or a commitment to paper processes, or they love their own individual software and they're happy to carry this piece of paper from here to there because they know those systems? How do we enroll leadership into the culture shift that we need in order to transform?
Okay, going first again, sorry about that. Few things that come to my mind, like first, foremost is, we are the ones who are listening to the organization, right? All the time. We are talking to people, we are conducting various surveys and so on. And our ability to really analyze the root causes of the discomfort or disengagement, right? It's not always compensation, right? So there are various things that are happening, and most times It is the processes or the technology and so on. So we could essentially get into that leadership position very easily if we are really doing that analysis and going back to business on a regular basis, saying, hey, these are the areas where the technology sucks, people are not happy, it's making the process cumbersome, and we could possibly do something about it. So now what you have done is, instead of pleading to be on the table, now you have actually set the table, right? So you are the one who is actually now driving it to a great extent, and that too from an employee angle, right? The other challenge, which I think we as HR leaders and HR teams have to really work on, is our own tech friendliness. We as a function generally are pretty low on that. So while there are the new generation which is coming in, which is a little more tech savvy, but still, as compared to the rest of the organization, we are not really tech savvy. We are typically the last on the train, right? So, learning more about technology, what's happening in the technology world and so on, could be another way of getting into that leadership position when you bring that knowledge into the organization in terms of what's happening out there and what are some other things that technology can help us do or achieve in terms of productivity or engagement or what have you, right? And last but not the least is, of course, staying in touch with the leaders in the organization, not just for digital transformation, but all other change that is happening in the organization or they are bringing in their functions, so that they keep us top of their mind. Like whenever they're thinking of any kind of change, they think of the HR leadership first, because they understand that people is a big component to what they are going to do.
I can jump in. I really like this question for a few reasons. One being that I've been in organizations that, this hierarchy, this paper process, the what I call the commitment to comfort is what they may have been leading with. So when we talk about like how HR can transition from enforcing these policies to really nurturing this, the first thing that came to mind to me was start where you are, not where you wish you were, right? In rigid or paper first environments, or what I call, again, committed to comfort environments, HR can become a bridge, and we really have to work to be that bridge, not just an enforcer. A bridge is not an enforcer, right? Bridges support, bridges allow connection, and that's what we need to really think about. So even if it starts with identifying one process, one pilot, one team where you can model what digital change actually looks like, that's going to be really important, right? It's not about ripping up all the rule books, though some of them need to be ripped up. Let me just be very clear about that. You want to show people that small wins can add up by building that momentum, right? I think it's like attacking anything. If someone goes on a fitness journey, right? Just seeing those small incremental wins can really be beneficial for them, right? It helps that mindset, and HR really working to help nurture the change by shifting the mindsets first and not systems. That can go a really long way, right? And the best way to lead sometimes is to quietly making it easier to do new things than it was to do old things, right? Again, that goes back to what's in it for me. If you are going to save me time, that's going to help me, but that may not be what's beneficial for someone else. So understanding what the benefits are for people around is going to be really helpful. So if you want to shift culture, don't just write new policies, show new possibilities.
And I would like to add to that. For me, it's a combination of having like a full vision and a laid out journey as a whole of this is what we are envisioning today. And even this vision might evolve during the journey because we are learning, hopefully. And at the same time, designing this journey in a very like tangible, observable, experiential way of saying, well, people actually don't just see theories and processes and something very disconnected, but something tangible where they can identify with, where they can not identify with, but they have something to play with. And I guess here I thought about, well, HR, yeah, business leader, not business leader, enabler, etc. And I think what Yusuri mentioned as well is this, like, HR is the least tech function in the company in many cases. And it's something that we then need to work in parallel in a way. On the one hand, working on ourselves as a function, on this, like, evolving further with, like, embracing digital opportunities and tools. And on the other hand, we are the functional experts of enabling organizational transformation for the digital disruption. So why don't we combine both and say, oh yes, hand on heart, we have no clue and we go first and we just try it out. And with this, like, mindset of learning, of experimenting, of failing, and then picking it up again and further improving, we can role model and kind of like lead the way and inspire the rest of the organization to go along. They might be much further from a technical perspective. From a mindset, this might just help spread.
Yes, I think it was already very well answered, and I don't think I could have much more added value. Also, for me, this question is a bit hard to answer literally because I always work for tech companies, and that a little bit the other way around. We don't have to convince anyone to use technology. People actually do not want to do anything that is not technology, and we rather suffer from if this is not the perfect best user experience and there is any bug in the process or in the systems that we're using. It's quite especially the engineer, technical tech people can be very openly giving feedback to us about that. When is it coming to hardship for us to actually use digitalization is more coming from governmental bureaucracy. In certain countries, it is not allowed to do certain things digitally or still require hard copies, vetting signatures, stored documentation, etc. And that's often slow us down, or we are unable to go fully digital. So from my end, in tech companies, one is super important that if we are using something digitally, it has to be a very good user experience, because these people expect the best tech, what available on the market, and then how we can figure out this with the different governments and agencies that are still, if we say HR is still behind with the digital transformation, you can imagine how does it look like from different countries, what they are demanding and what level of bureaucracy is still there in actual paperwork and Excels. So finding the bridge, how we can get those things done and still remain digital, I think that's for the challenge for us, and to provide the best user experience as well.
Let's get practical, because we can talk theoretically all day about how we deserve the seat at the table and how we have to engage and enroll. But sometimes it can be easy to walk away from these conversations thinking that would be neat, but I don't know how. So if you could each share an example of a time that you led a digital transformation, either within the organization that you worked in or in a consulting capacity. You can talk about how you enrolled and engaged people in the process, or how you got the seat at the table, or what was easier or more difficult than you imagined it would be. Let's just share a couple of examples of how you have taken the reins on a digital transformation and found success.
Lauren, if I may, just suggest to rephrase the question slightly, to come with more theoretical stuff, but I think it gets us more into the practical. When I hear the question, I'm like, well, this is not practical if we go that way. You know why? Because whenever I come across the term digital transformation, it sounds to me like we are talking about this whole era we are in right now, of further evolving our whole business world with all the technical solutions. And when I listen to the rest of your question and to this like practicality we are looking for, I'm much more reminded of, let's say, a very concrete project, program, initiative that I have run to implement any, let's say, kind of digital solution in whatever way. Just to have this like pointed out, because I think there is a lot of like just nice words flying around in our industry. Are we going into that second direction of like a very specific program, project, initiative?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Good. Shall I go first? Okay, just to get started. So having worked both in corporate and in consulting with different clients, I have done different, like various of those projects. For example, implementing Workday or implementing SuccessFactors, or looking at also like in the organization, in the sales organization, implementing a new CRM, etc. So a lot of those things that come together. What I saw in those programs being helpful for me to look at was kind of like different categories, what I call dimensions, what I called it. It was first, let's say, this whole topic of the business strategy and the culture, to see like what is our context that we navigate in, because this determines in a way what are the quick wins that we can realize, and where would we really have a hard time if we tried to implement that and use that here in this context. For example, saying if we have a very hierarchical organization, then coming along and saying, oh, we work in an agile way and we do sprints, etc., is just not in their terminology at all. So it would request like another change in a way of getting where we want to get. So how do we run this program overall depends on the culture and the leadership and the context around. Then the second one is then specifically looking into leadership, of saying, well, how do those leaders here actually tick? So what do they want to get out? What is also the perception? So for example, when we implemented SuccessFactors, saying, oh yeah, this is just HR getting their stuff more easier because till right now nothing works. It's like, okay, that's a perception to work with. So is it just making things easier? So going into this operational efficiency, or do we really want to say, well, we want to shift the way the people practices are done here? So shifting that story also that leadership should perceive and then convey and further share. And I think then we tapped on it earlier on, is like, yeah, the technical stuff is quite easy by itself. Well, we have to make sure that it's really easy. So putting ourselves into these different like stakeholder groups and of the audience, of saying, yeah, we might have the 25-year-old people coming in, and we come and say, here is a new tool, and they say, oh, just give me the QR code so I can download the app, and they run away. And there are the 55-year-old people, and it might not even depend on age, but on just personal preferences, of saying, what's a QR code? And then like, okay, if I click on that, so what do I do next? So a very different approach of offering learning opportunities to walk that path, to take on new behaviors. So there is something that comes across simple. How do I really make it specific and have people train it? And by the way, while they train this new behavior, exclude everything else that is going on. Don't change anything else. It's proven science that if we want to change more than one thing at a time, both things that we change are much slower till we have got it. And this is what I saw in those projects. It's like, oh, we can run this project and that project and that project. It's like, it all comes down to the behavior one person needs to change. And this is what we need to orchestrate wisely. And then thinking about, well, we keep hearing this term of like adoption rate. Yeah, that's about the technical stuff. So how do we make sure at the very beginning to say, here is, let's say, a smart dashboard of a few like KPIs and PPIs and make it like quantitative and qualitative, that we will know when we sit down today, how does the journey look like if we end in a year from now? Where do we want to say, yeah, job done, we are really done successfully? So making it specific and saying, well, number of trainings conducted, number of clicks on this link can be a fun PPI. What's the KPI behind? What do we really want to see people? Like, do we want to see that managers spend less time spending in specific conversations in a way, because employees get to the system faster? So making this like really tangible for everyone to follow along.
Wow, that was really practical and detailed. Thanks, Heidi. I don't know if I can really add a lot to what you already mentioned. I would just go and based on my experiences, which are like full of failures, there have been a lot of failures through which I learned and eventually came to something that works pretty well. So I just try and narrate that, and possibly that will be a good summary to all that you said, you know. So I see it in like 3 phases, you know. So first phase is really, you know, understanding what is changing, what is happening, what is this new technology coming in, what will it do? And the other thing is who all will get impacted, right? So there are people who will essentially be executing the transformation. There are people who will be consuming it. And then there are tertiary layers of people who will get eventually impacted, right? So it's normally such changes get limited to just the people who are going to implement it, or at best, the people who are directly impacted. But there's a much bigger population of people who will actually have the tertiary impact, right? So really mapping that out is a big contribution that HR can make. And that has really put me right in the center, because when I come to the business with that kind of a mapping already done, and also already presenting what they are feeling about it and how it might impact them, that's a big value add for the business and for the people who are implementing. The second aspect is the implementation phase. So once you have made sure that all the stakeholders and people who are going to get impacted, even in a tertiary way, are included, the second part is working with the business to ensure how do we really maintain that excitement and engagement in the implementation phase. Because typically that is where the slack starts happening, right? So there are a lot of people who start, you know, falling by the side, and that becomes detrimental for the entire execution. So it is important to work out communication programs and so on to make sure that that excitement and engagement is maintained by all people involved all through consistently. And last, as Heidi pointed out about the KPIs, it's always good to you know, list them at the beginning, but it's not always also possible, right? Because a lot of it starts coming out when you start implementing some of those changes. People don't know everything right at the start, right? So the last phase of understanding the impact is very important. So most of the time we do the handover and the project roll off moment the implementation is completed, but the understanding of its impact over a longer period of time is very important, and getting all that feedback and weaving it back into the process is critical, because sometimes, like when it comes to adoption rate, it might be just those teething issues. It might be that early irritation, right? And if we are able to take care of that, well, then adoption rate could jump, you know, it could really go up. So it's very important to really you know, continue with the engagement during that phase and bring that feedback to the system. So if we do these 3 things accurately, the impact is much better.
Yeah. Charmin, you want to go first?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Lots of thoughts here, though. But the first thing I want to start with, though, because I've heard it a couple times, is that and I want to highlight is that HR is technical, right? It's just not the way that people may narrowly define it. And as a field, as a discipline, I really think we all have to stop repeating are living up to the stereotypes or these narratives around that, because it's not going to help us advance. Personally, I have 2 degrees in technology before I got a degree in HR, right? And I've worked in tech, I've worked in different industries, and I've worked with some really exceptionally savvy people. HR operations and HRIS, for example, even L&D and other areas don't happen well without someone or people having some expertise. So I do hope that as a discipline, we can get better at helping to shift the narrative that is already out there around us, and because it doesn't serve us. So something that I'm thinking about specific to this question is an HRIS implementation across multiple regions that I led a few years ago. I led the team in hosting working sessions with frontline managers to map out their pain points, things like duplicative data entry, unclear ownership, bottlenecks, because some systems and some processes love to create bottlenecks, right? And we didn't just design for efficiency, we designed with cultural competence in mind, right? And that meant adopting approaches across different teams, time zones, and communication styles, right? We worked in one region. What worked in one region wouldn't necessarily work in another, but we all knew what the North Star was, right? We all knew what I call if you watch Peter Pan, the first star on the right straight onto morning, we knew what our North Star was. We trained local champions, right? We surfaced quick wins, because sometimes we don't, when I say we, I mean collectively leaders, HR organizations don't always champion and promote the things that are working and winning, because you need to build that momentum. Just as I mentioned, like the fitness program, right? If you lift a new weight set and you went up 5 pounds in the weights you could lift, that's momentum. That's worth celebrating, right? Don't wait until it's, oh, now I can lift 20 pounds heavier. So the rollout, we did that based on readiness, not pressure, right? We knew what the North Star was and we planned for it. So this is where effective change management really comes into play. It's not just project management. Change management has to be, in my mind, the bigger piece of all of that. And the challenge wasn't just the tech, right? It was more around shifting behavior, shifting mindsets. And when you ground change in clarity, when you ground change in transparency, which I believe is proactive and honesty is reactive, and cultural understanding, it can stick. That's my spiel.
All right, it's hard to be the last one to answer, because everybody is answering so well, so there's not much left to say. But on a pragmatic sense, I have worked on 3 digital transformation, also starting from the 2000s. So back then, digital transformation was to have an online intranet and have a ticketing system, right? So it was very different compared to technology has evolved a lot and expectation evolved a lot. So went through 3 transition when we try to move from very direct face-to-face help to more digital way of helping, starting with intranet and ticketing systems and creating self-service also for the employees. Back then I worked for retail, where we had retail employees and warehouses. And I think there was 3 major thing that was really was a mistake to be made. They were very well planned, very well designed projects, really thought about many details of that. But the first problem was that the people who made the decisions, and what Charmin also said, with the differences between regions and countries, as well as many other details, the decision makers who were in the room, who were making the designs, they were not the one who ever worked in HR operations. So they really did not have no idea about what is the actual work is and how much knowledge and exceptions and other important factors are living in people's head. And they know what to do in certain situations, but it is not written in work instructions or any, this amount of data and information that we had to produce in writing in order to set up systems or train bots or creating business processes backend in a digital system. And when we went live, they did not realize that, okay, this now covers about 50% of the processes, but there are still 50% that are exceptions or just do not exist anywhere else, but in particular, HR managers or HR specialists had. And therefore, even if they had a certain timeline, how quickly we can digitalize and go into services or systems, how fast we can get that done. It was not possible because all these exceptions, all these small processes, they were all the time going around the system because you could not do it within the framework that they designed. It was not one big system that could fit all the purposes that we had. The second part, what was always a failure, is that they trained the HR people, the HR team, they did a lot of sessions with them, but they forgot one important thing. Many of these people, especially that generation, they went to HR because they genuinely want to help people. They love that interaction, that someone come to them, they solve a problem, and they feel amazing about themselves. That was their purpose, that was their drive. Now, clicking on buttons and working in the backend in applications and softwares does not give you the same satisfaction, does not give them that purpose, why they did their job. And then not focusing also on this, not understanding why people are in this function, why people are working in the given teams, and just changing completely the entire nature of their work did not work. Many people left, a lot of knowledge got lost. There was a lot of turnover, retraining. It was a really difficult time, and it's really hindered the whole digital transformation because we lost key people by not paying attention that they are actual human beings who are going through this transition, and skill training and presentations and some motivational speech not going to help them to really change their entire identity as professionals. And the third thing, what was a little bit of anecdotal, the psychology of the employees, especially in the low-tech jobs. Many of these people did not have very modern devices. They had maybe a smartphone, but the smartphones were not necessarily supporting the latest apps. But they were given that from now on they have to deal with their leave of absence or other requests that so far they always had a nice lunch break when they walked 10 minutes to the post of the HR team, where there were very nice HR employees who were having a nice chat with these people. You know, everybody felt good about themselves, and then they solved the problem together. So there was so many people who were super against this just because it really interrupted their routine, and it was a little bit the highlight of their day during a very difficult, physically demanding day. And they did not understand that they did not want productivity. They did not want faster resolution to these things. They wanted the human interaction. And very often digitalization results to less and less human touch. And that's really hard, I think, for many people who work in HR profession, as well difficult for employees who want that level of interaction with others.
Panelists, I could spend the whole day with you. And I think there are 40 other questions I could ask about follow-up and engagement and your role and our role and the leadership team's role. Unfortunately, we are already at the end of our panel. So I want to thank you, panelists, for a really, really rich discussion. And I want to thank our audience for very insightful comments and questions. And I do wish we could get to all of those questions and comments and spend the day chatting about them. If you're watching, this is your community. So make sure to connect to each other, to the folks you're meeting in the comments. Make sure to connect to the panelists and to me. We are one big community, and we have a real opportunity to be interacting with each other. Thank you again, panelists, and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever we find you today. I am so looking forward to this conversation. It's going to be a fantastic chat about not only what's happening today, but into the future. And I'm joined by some incredible panelists. Let's get them on the stage here. We've got a couple of great folks with which we're going to have a conversation. First off, Dr. Dennis Hill, Chair and CEO of IHIRM. Dennis, how are you doing today?
Wonderful, Matt. It's good to be here with you and Alexandra.
I have incredible background filter enemy because of that. That is incredible. That's a Western scene behind you there.
There we go.
So
AI's
I love it.
taking us back to the Wild West.
We
And
couldn't
then
see
some.
the whole thing till you moved. That's so great. I love it.
Fantastic. And Alexandra Levitt, thanks for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here, Matt.
Folks, we're going to have a real great conversation about emerging technologies. We've been talking about artificial intelligence, virtual reality, blockchain, there and the above, and we have two great experts here with which to weigh in. Before we get into it, maybe just like 15, 20 seconds from each of you. Dennis, your background, your experiences, and what has you doing things today?
Well, my favorite intro is that I'm retired but not expired. I actually head up the chair of IRIM, which is the International Association for HR Technology Professionals, Information Management. We're celebrating 45 years this year. From a background point of view, I held multiple degrees, including advanced degrees in engineering, business, and law. I have been involved in the blockchain industry for about 15 years, but working with AI since 1983. So in both application development as well as applied research. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's as quickly as I can say it. My elevators run out of height.
We got lots of time to explore more floors. Thank you, Dennis. And Alexandra.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alexandra Levitt, and I am a workforce futurist. And what that means in lay terms is that I work with organizations, including in the public and private sector, to identify the trends that are most likely to lead to disruption in the workforce. So we try to forecast 5 to 10 years ahead of time and talk about all of the things that are going to be most relevant. And that's one of the reasons I'm very excited for this panel. I've been doing this work for about 20 years, and it's absolutely fascinating to see how things have changed over time, and also very inspiring how we can, if we're looking around and paying attention, we can see how things are going to play. We don't have to be as taken by surprise.
Yeah, I completely agree. And a great thread we can pull on a bit later. And for those who don't know me, my name is Matt Burns. I spent 20 years in the corporate world, 15 in HR, 5 as an HR executive with companies like Walmart. I, in 2020, put on a virtual reality conference with Microsoft. And in 2023, launched a generative AI company for HR professionals. So the three of us together should be able to cover most of the ground, I think, in today's conversation. But let's start out with a small one. I'll open this kind of popcorn style. Looking at the current landscape today, what do people get wrong about artificial intelligence?
Dennis, do you want to start?
Well, why don't you start, Alexandra?
Okay. I think this is actually a great place to get started. And I think where people get this wrong, and by people, I'm referring to both employers and your standard, worker person. It's really everybody. Where we are going wrong is that we are expecting that AI-based technologies and automation are going to fully replace human jobs. The way that I have understood this is that wherever you insert a piece of artificial intelligence into a role that has been traditionally driven by a person or even a process, you still need a person to design its role, to manage its role, to fix it when it breaks, to explain how it works to decision makers, and then to market it and make use cases for the rest of the organization. So that's a lot of jobs that we just created with putting AI in. So I think people are getting wrong that it is this way that we can deploy mass layoffs and just get rid of all these people so that we can have things governed by machines, when in fact there does require a great deal of human oversight. And I'm sure Dennis, having the history here, has more to add on that.
Thanks, Alexandra. I'll start off with a couple of things. One, I totally agree with Alexandra saying that AI will fully replace workforces. It's just not going to happen. However, there are two aspects of AI that we have really unprecedented experience with from the past. It is a disruptive technology, and for those of you who do not have a lack or graying hair, as I do, I remember the disruption of PCs and microprocessors in the late 70s and early 80s when they came on board. And that's where I actually first identified disruptive technologies as the Wild West. It was kind of my favorite speaking stomp point, which is that we really don't know what the potential is. It's all fairly well imagined. We have no idea what the 80% of the market is going to wash out, leaving the only 20% that's really going to dominate, say, in the next 3 to 5 years, if it even is that long. But the 2 points I want to make is that AI is a technology that by its very nature is disruptive, and it is unique in all of the history of mankind and their inventions, humankind. It's the first technology that actually has the potential not to add workforce capacity, but to displace it, at least initially. And I think that's indisputable. I think we need to recognize and probably be continuing our analysis that started with COVID as to who was essential and non-essential, and start looking at what jobs are likely to be replaced by automation in a very practical sense, now that we're really talking about quickly developable applications in a largely software-driven world. That brings me to the second point, and that is that this is technology that is instantly scalable. We've never had this before. We've always had to create a manufacturing plant or fabrication plant or someplace to actually create this technology en masse so that we could distribute it. Software has been a little bit different, but even software requires a fairly large nucleus of people to write, develop, and maintain the software. But with AI, generative AI, or more importantly, agentive AI, and where we're going with truly artificial, self-aware technology, and I use that term guardedly, so I don't want to get in a big debate of whether or not AI is self-aware. I firmly believe it is not, but it can mimic that. And at some point, what you have is the second issue in being instantly scalable. I literally can start something like Mac did, probably, playing around with some software, trying some tools, and before you knew it, you could actually dispatch this thing into the cloud on AWS, and you have large worldwide scaled enterprises using the product without really the overhead that it required in the past. So those are two aspects of the technology and how that impacts the workforce. We're living it every day. And I think that would, if you want to go deeper into that, we can continue the conversation. But I think it is a great place to start, Alexandra. Very good.
We're going to poke at this a few different ways. And I think these are the kind of conferences we need to be having. I was at a conference recently that was wonderfully organized and had great speakers, great topics. And in the conversations, I felt like a lot of the people who were speaking had a surface level knowledge around artificial intelligence. They may be using AI in their personal lives, ChatGPT every single day, but the actual application of it in a meaningful way in the enterprise context was lacking. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of the people in the audience of that particular conference wanted to hear. And the reality is we're just not there yet in a lot of organizations. We're still stung up at the governance, the employee resource group, the steering committee phase of how do we move quickly through this. But I concur with both your perspectives. This is a disruptive technology moving at a speed that we haven't seen before. So to me, it begs the question, and I'm back to Dennis's earlier point. What excites me about artificial intelligence, among all the many innovations before it, is that it seems to me anyway, that artificial intelligence doesn't require you to choose between efficiency and experience. You could literally have both if you're thoughtful in the design and the deployment and the co-creation of different aspects, whereas traditionally HR people are asked to digitize as a precursor to job loss or to workforce contraction. To Dennis's point, AI doesn't necessarily require that. You can redeploy resources. You can empower and amplify resources. You can do so many more unique, interesting things. We're limited by our own imagination, and organizations have this nasty habit of putting wrappers around innovation and trying to put them into very clear boxes. I'm curious for you, as you each talk with organizations out there trying to navigate this nebulous, evolving space, for those that say, where do I start? What's your instant response to that? Alexandra, I'm just thinking about deploying AI in a meaningful way in my mid-sized organization. We don't have a long legacy of being digital natives in terms of our technology. Where do I start?
Oh, this is a great question, and I think it's really important to be practical. And I first of all want to give a piece of good news, and that's I actually think the advice I would typically give and have been giving for the last couple of years is start small, allow your people to experiment, have leaders model the use of AI, and particularly generative AI is very easy for the consumer to adopt and use to start doing things like summarizing meeting notes or working on analyzing people's schedules or even things like sales forecasting. It's really good at taking existing human material and repurposing it for another product or process that's very similar. So the original source has to be human, but generative AI is kind of low-hanging fruit. But you both have mentioned this gap that exists between how we can experiment with AI on kind of a basic cursory level and how we can actually deploy it so that in individual jobs, it makes a concrete difference. And obviously this is going to vary depending on the job or the function or the level that you're at. And that's where I think we see a lot of organizations stalling, is that really what needs to happen is at the team leader level, we need to be identifying the technologies that have the ability to help us do our jobs more productively and efficiently. And then at that level, we need to figure out the best way to deploy it. And if you think about it, this requires people that have experience with this, who know how to evaluate new AI-based technologies, who know how to oversee them, who know how to determine if they're working as intended. And this is a skill set that not a lot of people have. And so that's what I would now say. I know that's a step up from what I was saying a year ago or two, which was just experiment with this stuff and let people use it how they want. Now I think we need to take responsibility at the team leader level, and this is something that can be facilitated by HR, for figuring out how we are going to actually make a business case for our specific unit, and then be willing to train and advise employees on how to do that. And it's hard because none of us have this skill set. Yeah, well, Dennis, maybe you do. But, very few people in the workforce have this skill set now. So it's something we all have to be learning and also willing to update in real time, because as Dennis said, this stuff is changing by the day. So we could know how we're going to oversee today's technologies, but in 6 months, we could have something else. So it has to be a training mechanism where we're keeping up to date as things are shifting.
Dr. Hill.
Great answer. The more I listen to Alexandra, the more I want to put her on my board. It's absolutely true. I think as a practical sense, for those who are watching this and participating today, the challenge is that we are now recognizing a maturity in the HR management structure, where we're seeing now a second generation rise that came up in the automation era. And I target that at about Y2K. That's when I see a big demarcation between the traditional HR of the last century and having to be systems knowledgeable and techno fluent right around that Y2K, right? Because everybody was nervous about their systems crashing and payroll not being done. And all of a sudden, we needed to become very tech savvy, whether we were technical or not. And that generation right now is retiring. People have left, like the CHRO at NVIDIA, who prior to that was a dozen years at Amazon. That's 20 years of systems specification, identification, implementation, which includes all of the training. All of those things are retiring. And now you are left with people who have embraced the technology. We're no longer really baby boomer driven. It's cross-generational. And it's going to be just like we as parents looking at our kids having cell phones as early as 8, 9, 10 years old, coming home and working their entire educational career around tablets. We didn't have that exposure. And so they are more inclined to embrace the technology, which brings a couple of red flags up, right? Because we're losing I think that generation of tech savvy CHROs to the next generation. I'm not saying it's gone. I'm just saying, that the mentoring and the hand holding, the developmental aspects of bringing somebody along has lapsed. But we don't have regulatory in this country. We have a fundamental problem of not even recognizing who owns our own data. Square one in the United States, particularly, we're very good at writing standards, but we're horrible at implementing them. That's always been the case in technology. And in fact, for decades, I've said that technology is really the leading edge of law. In other words, law lags technology is another way to say it. And we see that here. We don't have certification for engineers who are writing software. We really don't require ethics in practice. We just want the next product. We want the next plug-on. We need the next edition. We need to be the first to Web3. We need to have something that secures the technology on blockchain. But we still haven't fundamentally agreed that your digital identity, including your work history, all of that that's related to that is actually owned by you. And that puts us in a lagging position behind literally the rest of the world. And until that does happen, then our workforce management systems, our HCMs, HRISs, and so forth out there are going to be fairly ubiquitous. They're going to be very ambiguous. And therefore, the AI applications that we're going to see analyzing and mining and working on that data are going to be fairly loose, unregulated, really unmanaged, from everything from the actual implementation of it to where it's touching the data and therefore the people, because I don't distinguish the actual and the digital twin. I think they're one and the same. So you probably know where I come down on data ownership. But the other aspect is all the way to what we're going to do with that information and how we're going to take action on it, because that's really what we want. We want actionable information. We don't want to waste our time. So regulatory, senior level management, couldn't agree with Alexandra more. Definitely challenges that we have. And I don't see anybody really stepping forward, whether it's a political leader or any other leader that's out there in corporate America, except saying, hey, this is great. Let's start the homesteading in AI. Let's run with that. There's discussions and there's some frameworks that are being proposed, but I've been working on blockchain-based or decentralized HR information now for 5 years with Australians, and we've tried to take that global, but we just can't seem to get the energy behind that from either the employers, the HR associations in other countries, or the software development firms themselves.
It's such a fascinating conundrum because there's so many competing forces and different points of tension on what's a very complex challenge. And yet it's still barreling down this rate of innovation at a speed that is breakneck in a lot of cases. That's, to me, the really interesting piece around artificial intelligence, is that it has all these really meaningful and frankly applicable, things around ethics and integrity. And Dr. Hill, you mentioned earlier, is AI truly agentic? Right now it's math, so it's probability based. So no. Will it get there? Yeah, probably. But right now we're playing with large language models and probability equations and playing with tension points. And I think that is good to know because it taps into Alexandra's earlier point around the ability to synthesize and analyze large sums of information, infer and take actions against that, greatly enhanced by artificial intelligence. But to this point, still not a proxy for smart judgment in leadership. Still not the interface that you want to have in particularly intimate conversations in an organizational setting. I still talk to many HR leaders who do not necessarily see a place for AI replacing interviewing quite yet. To have a conversation around onboarding or a performance evaluation delivered by artificial intelligence. But I don't think it's pie in the sky to suggest that 3 to 5 years from now, some of us will report to an AI leader. We won't call it that. It'll be an agent. We'll be responsible for delivering our work. It'll review our work. It'll give us feedback. And it'll be an agent of the organization, not for us. And that's where the interesting thing about AI for me is not just the first degree effects of which we've talked, but it's the second and third degree effects. And I think like a typical HR professional, like things like org design. The traditional pyramid model of I'm the CEO and I dictate through silos and through functions, and that permeates through the organization. And I create some degree of collaboration horizontally, but largely it's top down. That's the model of all publicly traded companies and a lot of other ones that are not publicly traded. And I look at an AI model and say, well, if the information flows so quickly, you can't have a pyramid. Otherwise, you invert the flow of information and it bottlenecks very, very quickly. Because if everyone's producing information at scale, one people or a small number of people can't be entrusted to make that many decisions simultaneously and do so well. And there will be inefficiencies in an organization where that's the design. So I look more at a planetary solar system, if you will, of models, and see a model where there's people surrounded by agents and agents talking to agents and agents talking to people, and that being the work of HR in the future. Thinking through not just reporting relationships, but where should the work rest, where should it belong, and where does the work transact? That for me is an exciting second degree effect. But I'd love to hear from each of you. When we think about deploying AI in organizations, what's a second degree effect that we don't often talk about?
Well, first of all, I think you're right that HR is going to have the role of job redesign. And I think smart organizations have already done this, realizing that we need to be deconstructing every role into its component parts and determining where those parts should sit. What are the parts that are most applicable to be taken over by automation or AI-based technologies? What new parts of that job need to exist? Do we need to be combining jobs? I remember about 10 years ago, Deloitte was talking about super jobs, where we didn't necessarily have to have all these individual jobs anymore because certain components were being automated. But at the same time, we absolutely needed to be combining certain jobs that now related more to each other and also giving people enough productive work that they could find meaningful. Secondary effects, I would have to say there are two. Ownership. Dennis, you touched on this, but I think part of the problem with mass deployment of AI in organizations is that nobody knows where it should sit from a very basic level. Like, is this owned by IT? Is it owned by innovation? Is it owned by the product side of the house, the operation side of the house? And that you have all of these players that are trying to put a stake in the ground. And there's just a lot of confusion. And also, I think that confusion can result in either having an over-reliance on the information and data that AI provides. We say, oh, because AI showed it to us or said it was this, so that we need to like go forward, and then having that potentially be contradicted in other areas of the organization because they're going with a different set of data. So I actually look at a second degree potential problem as reputational fallout when this hits the external world, when a big snafu occurs with data accuracy or a decision that was made. I'll just quickly tell my favorite AI-related story that's actually a couple years old now, but it's still my favorite. And it's the time, I don't know if you both remember, when a gentleman was physically removed from a United Airlines flight in Chicago O'Hare's airport. And the reason that he was removed is because the AI-based system that they were using said that the flight attendants had to take the seat of this gentleman who had paid for reservation, a seat on that flight. And nobody really questioned whether or not they should actually force somebody to get off the plane because this flight attendant needed to get from point A to point B because the system told them so. And they just kind of blindly did this. And it was in the national news for weeks that this guy refused to get off and they physically removed him from the plane. And that's exactly the kind of thing that worries me. That we're just well, AI told us to do it, and this is what's best for business. So we're just going to not use our judgment, not use our unique human skills to determine if this is actually an appropriate course of action that will be good for our organization in the long term. So those are just a couple thoughts from my side.
It's very insightful because mistakes are guaranteed when human beings are involved, especially when they want to rely on technology, right? So risk mitigation is the secondary aspect of this, right? Right now we're in the Wild West. I keep bringing that up. It's kind of like when I was a kid, I don't know how many of you remember these chemistry kits they used to sell, right? In the toy store. I mean, you could make all sorts of things with these materials, many of which were harmful and maybe even carcinogenic. Were the early easy bake ovens with, the 100-watt, 200-watt light bulbs in them and melting the plastic and doing all sorts of things. AI's there. AI is that shiny object right now. I think what's going to happen is just as we saw in the evolution of search engines. I remind people that Google was not number 1, 2, or 3 introduced. They were 28th or 29th on the list, right? And they dominate the market because of their business strategy, because of the people that are involved, the things they thought about. And when an organization lags in the use of technology, well, then they're not keeping up with the Joneses. It's just not going to happen. So what's going to drive this ultimately, I think, is kind of like what was the liability incurred by United by trying to escort that person off the plane? You know who gets involved in that? Lawyers, people who, as a profession, tend not to embrace a lot of technology. It really does lag in that profession. And when we look at what these technologies are doing today, they are the shiny object in the room. It's great to have, if you've ever had a really great, perfect executive assistant, somebody who could just, whisper in your ear and tell you exactly what was going on in the organization or the direction it should go. Anybody who's been in a C-suite has always had, I believe they've always had, a valuable executive assistant, whether they're titled that or not. It could be the confidant, the advisor in the other corner. It could be another C-suite officer. It could be somebody working in a completely different department, but somebody who kind of keeps them informed and rational in their approach. And information, not to sound too Machiavellian about this, but information is power. And AI offers the ability to dissect, digest, distill valuable information that people might be more inclined to act on without doing their due diligence. But I think what's going to happen that secondary and tertiary level is that the risk mitigators are going to be involved. And we're going to see more solidification or more calcification maybe of things that we've done traditionally before we evaluate and deploy a technology. Web3 is upon us. It's coming with not just AI, but blockchain and other, we're going to see a completely tokenized economy. I don't think people really can look at the future like Alexandra can and predict and have any depth of understanding, Matt. That's what your point was earlier at the conference, that there was a shallow kind of superficial level of understanding. People know that they need to be involved with the technology. But it's, again, go back to the Wild West and the homesteading period. Sure, they're all on the riverfront looking west, and they're all going to go out there and stake out their land. But many of them won't even get across the river. They're going to drown,
And that was a dangerous period too in the Wild West when everybody was trying to jockey for position.
Yeah.
It was pretty chaotic.
And it was, in a lot of ways, a forced march of sorts, in that people thought there'd be a better future for them if they just simply moved west, and did so on blind faith with not a lot of context and not a lot of supplies. And it kind of feels like we're drawing parallels. I love that poster more and more that we talk as a group. I'd love to poke at this a bit more from a different direction. So we've talked about artificial intelligence. We've talked about it from a few different directions. We've talked about how quickly it's being adopted. We've also touched on a couple of other innovations, blockchain and virtual reality specifically. Why do you each think that artificial intelligence has exploded at the rate of adoption that it has, while technologies like virtual reality and blockchain, which have poked their head up over the last 10 to 15 years in kind of less meaningful ways and then receded, why has artificial intelligence exploded and seemingly has this traction in the market, this disruptive force, whereas you haven't seen similar disruptions from things like blockchain and virtual reality, at least not today?
I would love to let Dennis talk about blockchain because I think he's the expert there. That's where I have kind of a cursory knowledge and understanding. But my favorite aspect of this question is virtual reality, because that is something that I think is a sleeping giant. A couple of years ago, the term metaverse was all the rage. It was like, we're going to be living and working and playing in the metaverse. And people thought that was a fad. And that's where I actually want to disagree with all the people that thought it was a fad. I actually think within the next 5 to 10 years, the degree to which we are starting to move regular everyday life into virtual reality or into the metaverse is going to be a really, really exciting place, a really exciting proposition. Why do I think it has not moved at the pace of AI. I think it has a lot to do with accessibility, and also the technology is just not where it needs to be. Where we see the mass adoption of virtual reality is in the gaming world. And there are, in fact, huge amounts of revenue being created around the gaming community and its use of virtual reality in the metaverse. It's actually quite mature. But the issue when it comes to like regular everyday people and doing regular everyday things in virtual reality in the metaverse is that, for one thing, about 25% of people get sick using the technology as it currently stands. Like, you get nauseous, you don't want to be there. It's also not fully immersive. You kind of feel like you're moving an avatar around in sort of a primitive Nintendo setup when you're using these technologies. So it's not palatable to anyone right now. In order to make a massive shift, we saw a similar thing with just regular old video conferencing, how the technology was theoretically available to everyone to use. I think, Dennis, you would know better than me, but I want to say like the 90s is when we started having really good video conference technology. And yet that didn't take off until COVID, when organizations were forced into distributed work. And then all of a sudden it was like, where has this been all our life? Like, we could have used this before. And I think virtual reality in the metaverse is similar. It will require a massive disruption that will prevent people from reliably being in any one place at a given time. And we will have to make the shift. And simultaneously, I see the technology evolving so that the experience is more immersive, it is more rewarding, it's less apt to make people sick and not want to deal with it. And it will also be relatively affordable. That's been the other challenge, is that this technology is clunky, it's hard to procure, it's expensive. So that's kind of something that I'm really, really looking forward to, because I think this will happen. I think there's almost no doubt that we will live and work in virtual reality in this century.
Ditto. I can't add to that because Alexandra did such a great comprehensive assessment of where we're at. It is mature in the gaming industry. We're raising a generation or two or three that have been immersed in gaming technology. They're used to role-playing environments. They're used to 3D, but there are ergonomic aspects of the technology that are prohibitive at this point. Will it and will it be suitable for every job? Would we be like in the movie Surrogates, where we're all lying in some bed someplace, controlling our android bodies and that sort of thing? Well, I mean, go to the movies. The scariest one, I think, is Colossus: The Forbin Project, about 1970-72. In that range, it shows the takeover of the entire world by two supercomputers that start talking to one another. They're AI based, and they actually generate circuit diagrams and layouts so that the people can build the interface boards and provide a voice interface. We have come through that. I was a kid when that movie came out. It's my favorite movie. Put it in my casket or my urn when I go, please, because I could watch that for all eternity. But that said, let me talk about VR having been addressed. I'm a VR nut. I've played with everything that's come out, even Google Glasses and the sets for the PS consoles and the Xbox and their vision recognition system over the years. I've been a developer. I've been an authorized developer for Microsoft since literally 1983. So that's kind of dating me, but I go all the way back to looking at the very first Windows. That said, when you look at technology and its application, blockchain is a really good example. Blockchain has been equated primarily with the cryptocurrency industry and largely with Bitcoin. And people are like, well, that's just, you got the group out there that says it's just vaporware and I'm never going to trust, software-based assets. It's not going to happen. But then you look at the democratization movement right now, right? In all things, not just in technology itself, but in real estate. I watch it globally. And one of the fastest growing organizations in this country is built around tokenization of real estate, which basically means that everybody, literally everybody, whether you make in $150,000 or $40,000 a year or $400,000 a year, everybody has the ability to own real estate through a decentralized or tokenized economy. So blockchain has real practical applications. It's fundamental to smart cities. It's fundamental to society, and beyond the currency aspect is my point. It can be tied to workforce information. It could be tied to all sorts of things. When we start talking about, I could spend a day just talking to folks about decentralized HR and what that really looks like. But what blockchain does not have is a good spokesperson. It's I'll give you a perfect example. If UKG, Workday, or whatever vendor you pick it was to completely redesign their software on blockchain, first of all, you can't patch your way to blockchain. You can't patch your way to Web3. Let me start off with that. You can't patch it like we're doing today. We're doing these APIs and doing these interfaces and plug in even with AI. No, that's not Web3. Web3 requires a completely new architecture that's built in blockchain and completely new embedded tools like AI and interfaces to support VR, or a completely immersive multimodality relationship with the assets you're working with. So in essence, this is all going to require completely new design. The interesting thing is that the typical user of the inventory control system or the AR or the payroll, the HCM, isn't going to see anything different on their screen, except for the VR example. They're not going to see anything. We're on blockchain. Great. That's great climactic, no air in the bubble kind of thing, because it's behind the scenes. It's incidental. It's there. It has a whole new level of security, adds all new sorts of capabilities, but it's invisible. It doesn't have a good spokesperson to the common user. And I think AI right now, most people don't understand if they've never sat down and played with ChatGPT for 15 minutes, really don't have a concept of how interactive it is and how valuable it is. And if they really had that 15 minutes of exposure, I think they'd be finding themselves addicted and probably spending hours, if not days, on their weekends and on their time off, really trying to get that depth.
Yeah, like me. And that's how I spend most of my time, either in a VR headset or playing with generative AI or musing about blockchain. And I think the question for me was intentional insofar as I think artificial intelligence has had an impact on both and will have an impact on both, but in different ways. So I think Alexandra's earlier point around accessibility is spot on. When you introduce a chat-based interface to anything and make it more accessible, people will use it and adopt it. Virtual reality requires you to put on a headset. People feel silly. 25% get sick, and there's barriers to entry that are coming down, but there's still barriers to entry. Augmented reality is much more practical. We've seen Pokemon Go have more success because you can bring it into your environment versus entering somebody else's environment. That being said, I'm a huge advocate of virtual reality. At the conference in 2020, we had 800 people in virtual reality headsets, 60 speakers, all in headsets over 3 days. It was awesome. We had a great time. And the hypothesis then, I think, still holds true, which is that there are certain interactions that we want more intimacy in when we don't have co-location. We can't always be in the same place for a variety of reasons. There might be a geographic barrier. There might be a disability barrier. There might be an economic barrier. And artificial intelligence powered VR allows us to be able to have those interactions in those ways. I hopefully don't see a world where we operate in a virtual reality headset 24 hours a day. I did it for 3 straight days and dreamed in avatars for 2 weeks. But after that, for using it for specific periods of time, to me, it's part of the future workforce's playbook. Here's your laptop, here's your cell phone, here's your virtual reality headset. You use each for. So I think that's exciting. And I think where AI has an even more instrumental effect on VR is in simulation-based training. Before, we were talking about decision trees. We were talking about choose your own adventure levels of maturity when it came to building training programs. But the organizations that are investing most in this technology, McDonald's, Yum Brands, Amazon, Walmart, are doing so because they have scale and understand that simulation-based learning leads to greater adoption and greater integration of knowledge and application of knowledge. And in a world where we're trying to shorten the time to everything, including productivity, that's not immaterial. So I think that for me gets really exciting. I'm excited about that. Blockchain to me is a different conversation. I think risk through AI fuels blockchain, because to me, Dr. Hill's spot on. It's not necessarily the currency piece, it's the democratization and the assurance and integrity of information that is lacking in a lot of parts of our world right now. To be able to trust the information in front of you, whether it's in an HCM technology or on your social media feed, is a little bit like, what day are you asking? With blockchain, we get a level of assurance and a level of democratization and decentralization that will give everyone a lot more comfort than they might have, knowing that their people data is managed by a couple of administrators and predicated on APIs that don't have a lot of oversight. So I think it's a really exciting time because artificial intelligence, where we started, is ultimately the catalyst for a lot of other great innovations that are also going to have meaningful effects on the way that we do work. So as we wrap up today's session, I want to give you each a final opportunity, closing thought. So popcorn style, given all the things that we've talked about and all the things that you're thinking about, what's one thing you want to leave our audience with today?
I guess I'll go first. I would say I would like to leave the audience with a very cursory understanding of career durability. And career durability is the ability to remain gainfully employed for the foreseeable future despite external disruptions. So you need to have the right hard and soft skills, but you also need to have applied technology skills, which means knowing what technologies are available to help you do your job better and being able to evaluate and deploy them. And also having a growth mindset, understanding that no matter how old you are, we're all continuously learning. The world is changing quickly, and we are okay operating in that environment. Every person, from the most entry-level employee or the worker that's in a manufacturing plant to the most senior leader, needs to focus on their own career durability and take responsibility for ensuring they're upskilling or reskilling in the right ways.
John Nesbitt wrote about it in Megatrends back in the 1980s, that lifelong learning was going to be a cultural requirement for the future. That was very, very different as a concept. But that lifelong learning and that continuous improvement methodology that has been applied in business is now necessarily applied in our own lives. I just want to echo what Alexandra said there. That is all about career durability. And I really appreciate Hacking HR and the time to be here today to share these ideas with on such an illustrious podium.
Likewise, I really appreciate it as well. It's been delightful.
It's been a lot of fun, folks. Thank you for everyone for your time today. You can watch the recording later on. I know I will be watching the recording. You can find information for Alexandra and Dr. Hill on LinkedIn. Please reach out. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your days and weeks. We'll talk soon.
everyone, and good whatever moment of this day you are enjoying on your time zones. And it's such a joy and privilege to welcome you to yet another conversation that sadly will take us even closer to the wrap up of our 3-day summit. My name is Minola. I will be your co-host for the next 40 minutes or so. And while I will ask Jessa to bring up the speakers for our chat today, which promises to be a very interesting one, we will talk about sustainable HR technology solutions. I do want to welcome everybody in the audience, whether you just joined or you rolled over from the previous conversations. I hope you have been enjoying all the insights and the wonderful energy from our panelists and also from all your colleagues in our Hacking HR community out there. Just a very short request. Please do feel free to use the comments as your own conversation space. Whatever it is that we bring up with the panelists, do consider the questions open to you as well. So drop all your insights, drop all your stories, raise questions. We will keep an eye on the chat and we'll bring highlights from there into our conversation. But using the chat is one of the best ways to support this community growing and learning from each other. So let's try to make most of our very, very short time here today. And what I will do, I will pass the e-mic around clockwise as you are on my screen, otherwise no pressure. And I will ask you to firstly, shortly introduce yourselves, and also what is the lens of sustainability that you bring into our conversation today. And also just a very quick logistics request. When you are not actively participating in the conversation, if you can mute yourselves so that we don't have strange echoes and sounds going on. So Shady, welcome. So good to see you on the screen.
Minola, thank you so much. And it's a pleasure being with you and the rest of the panel. I'm sure we will learn a lot today. A quick introduction. My name is Shady. I've been in the field of human development for the last 27 years. And I'm a part-time instructor in the university. That's my passion, training and designing curriculums for HR students. I'm going through actual experience in my company where we manufacture and export commercial buses. Sustainability is a serious issue for us, and part of my job description is taking the concept to the HR department and apply it on reality. So this is a great experience for me. Thanks for inviting.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. Suzanne, it's so good to see you on my screen again. Welcome.
Hey, Minola, I hope you're well. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for the invite. So Suzanne McGovern, I'm a Chief People Officer, most recently at Ipsy, an online beauty company. I'm kind of like the Benjamin Button of HR. So I've started in really big global organizations and then got much, much smaller. So IBM Consulting, then Splunk, which is a software company here in Silicon Valley, and then more recently Ipsy. The way or the lens, Minola, that I'm looking at sustainability is as a people professional for sure, an HR leader, but also like as a concerned global citizen and as a mom. You know, I do want something to be left for the next generation and for the planet. So that's my lens, and very happy to be with you all and look forward to learning from you. Thanks, Minola.
Thank you. What you just shared reminded me of that saying I heard a while back, that there is no planet B, and it kind of stayed with me. Cynthia, good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. It's so great to be here with everyone. My name is Cynthia Patterson. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a fractional HR and an AI consultant, and I work with mostly mission-based companies that value diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And I'll echo what was said earlier, that my lens is the same, and it's one that I think that justice has to be part of that long-term solution. I'm also a board advisor for an organization called Uptown and Boogie, a healthy project that supports the Harlem and the Bronx and it focuses on food security and food sustainability. So I'm based in New York City, so if anybody would like to ever connect in person in real life, would love to connect.
Thank you. Carol, good to see you. It's been a hot minute.
It has been, Manola. Thank you. And thanks for Hacking HR for having me. My name is Carol Cooley, and I am a Chief People Officer. A lot of my experience have been in highly regulated industries. So think about things like financial services, brokerage, healthcare, health insurance. And so I bring kind of that, not only that people leader lens, but also the regulation piece along with it. Suzanne, I really appreciate what you said about the mom lens. My daughter is studying conservation biology in college, and she's decided she's not going to have a job when she gets out of school. So I think about it from the lens of being a mom of someone who I know is concerned about the future of the world and the planet, as am I. But she's looking at it not just from the sustainability of the planet, but also, what is my livelihood going to look like? So that's a little bit unique perspective from me. I'm based in Denver, Colorado, and as Cynthia said, I'd love to connect with those who are in Denver and those around the globe that have an interest in this topic. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and making our panel complete. Ngozi, good to see you.
Good to see you, Manola. And I know that I'm in great company with all of you. I do echo everything you said. My name is Ngozi Oke, and I am a global head of people and culture. And I've been in this space for over 10 years across several industries, including mortgage banking, and currently in marketing technology. I'm also on the board for Hunger Free America, which is a national organization with the mission to eradicate hunger. And I am also the founder of the People's Talkspace, which is an organization that creates safe employee-centered spaces to process things that happen within organizations or within our world. So I wear several hats, and sustainability comes up quite a bit across all of these hats. And when I think about sustainability, I always sort of like to think about it in the way that company leaders think about it. And often they think about sustainability within the scope of their organization really being able to stick around long term, right? CEO, executive leaders, they usually want their company to not just stick around long term, but also to grow. And so to align with that in terms of people or culture, I tend to say, well, if you want your organization to stick around and to grow, we need to make sure that our planet sticks around and is healthy. And we need to make sure that we are supporting and catering to our people, right? Because they run these organizations. And so that's sort of how I think about sustainability in a way that connects us to the language and the perspective of executive leaders.
I am smiling quite big, one, because I really am happy to be here, but I said it several times in the past that Hacking HR conversations feel like sunshine. And today and yesterday, although I took the panel from a completely different spot in my house, I had sunshine in my eyes. So the universe is like, here, you have your Hacking HR sunshine. But let's take the topic one layer deeper. When you think about HR tech, how would you recommend people in the audience to go into decision-making conversations or into assessments leading up to decision-making moments when it comes to balancing people and the planet through HR tech? And I always go diagonally. So Cynthia, please be our pioneer for this one, and then everybody jump in and build a conversation.
Yeah, thank you. So as far as, getting started, I think that it's really important that HR is one of the driving leaders of the conversation and that it has to be a cross-functional experience. So having frameworks that actually evaluate people and the planet at the same time are really important. Some of the things that you can look at are things like environmentally responsible frameworks, platforms, things that are products that are B Corp certified, or aligned with other agencies that are doing work in the space. And one thing that I think about when I'm doing evaluations on reducing harm, which is kind of the goal of these systems or these frameworks, is that you're going to think about offsets. So let's say that you're looking or evaluating a product that might not meet all of the things that you want it to, idealistically and in practice and from a value standpoint. I actually look for other opportunities to be able to say, like, well, if we do decide to choose this framework, where is something else that we can move? What's a lever that we can move to be able to make a positive impact? We need to be able to make sure that from a people's perspective, that all the systems that we use are designed to work with people, with human in the loop. And I will probably talk ad nauseum about AI during this conversation, just as a warning to everyone. And so all of my frameworks kind of come from the AI ethical side of the house. But I would love to hear what other people have to share.
Thank you.
I'll go next. If I think about it, I also kind of maybe put another spin on sustainable. I like to think because there's so much out there and so many different products that are aligned to doing a lot of different things in the HR space. There's a couple of things that I always keep top of mind in my work. And I really like to get to the root of what problem is it we're trying to solve. And then is technology the right solution for that? And third, I would also offer, is this sustainable, but from an employee perspective? How much change are we introducing into the employee life cycle, into their daily routines? And is this something that they're going to be able to absorb and value add from the employee perspective and from the organization's perspective? So when I think about sustainable, I also layer on that lens of the employee experience and making sure that we're not just adding a new shiny gizmo for gizmo's sake, if you will, but that we're really doing something that's going to be value add for the organization and something that we can leverage over the course of time, that will integrate well with other systems, with other practices and processes, and will make it easier for people to do business with human resources and for employees to gain a better experience throughout their day.
I'll just add and confirm to what Carol just mentioned. When you guys are talking, I'm just thinking of some of the challenges that we as HR people go when we introduce this concept, sustainability, AI, technology, and stuff like that. For some reason, one of my main challenges is making people understand that this is everyone's responsibility. Sustainability is not for the engineering department. AI is not for the IT or technology. And really, this is something I struggle with. And currently what I'm doing is providing AI training for each department, AI for finance, AI for HR, AI for IT. So the concept is shared across all departments. Then I think my next stage is taking it into reality and into action through the HR team now. We are using tracking system and trying to link this to the concept of sustainability. The less paper and job description and CVs you print, it will not only affect the environment, because some people will buy this concept, some people will not, but beside the environment, it will save your time, it will save your effort, it will bring you to less error results, and so on. So this is the combination I'm concerned about, and I'm trying to go through these days.
And adding on to that, I agree with what everyone said, but what Carol said kind of struck me in terms of the employee experience. And I think widening that to employee well-being as well, it's just really important to center on the employee as folks in this space and be thinking about the long term, not something performative and dependent on a leader or whoever's in your C-suite or whoever's in the administration of the day, but what's long-term good for your employees, for the company, and for the planet. And from there, like using that as a guide to choose sustainable vendors, to choose people who want to do good in the world, and to invest in, technology that helps mitigate bias and, do things like Shady said in terms of having stuff on-prem, not being on paper, things that are quite basic, like on e-learning, collaboration tools, like measuring support, etc., that you can all do online right now, but just being very thoughtful and intentional and not like following the latest trend, but doing things for your employees that, as I say, will benefit the company and benefit the planet over the long haul.
Yeah, I really love that, Suzanne. I do think it's really important when we think sustainability and even when we think about change management, right? How it does impact employees, how it really plays with the current processes that are in place. I do like to also sort of pan out and when it comes to selecting vendors and partners to sort of meet a need within the organization in order for the company to be more sustainable, right? Oftentimes, sometimes, you'll need to partner with a vendor or to, recruit a tool or something like that to help you do that. And I do like to think about the business ecosystem and how that tool or that vendor is playing with others. And I think that that's one way, as an organization, we can really look at, how we're being responsible and moving responsibly, with the power, right, that organizations tend to have, right, the capital that we can yield is we're, thinking about the vendors that we are partnering with and using and doing some research to understand how are they, impacting the business ecosystem, right? Like, what is their carbon footprint? And it's not just about, meeting our need, but how are they walking the walk themselves, right? Are there DEI reports that they put out that we can review and see what their progress has been? How do they treat their employees over there, right? How are they taking care of our planet? And so that's something that I really leaned into in the last few years, because I think that's one way that we can really make an impact as an organization to make sure that we are holding other organizations accountable.
For the next question, I do want to give co-facilitation credit to Ashvini because her comment in the chat inspired my next question. How do you factor in, if at all, if in any way, the need to cater for either a remote workforce or a hybrid workforce when you make decisions for sustainable HR tech? And I will leave the question on the Zoom table, and please jump in as inspiration strikes. Are there any specific elements that you pay attention to if you have remote workforce or hybrid workforce?
If it's in the arena of technology, one of the things that I think is really common is using AI tools, whether you're in an office or working remotely. But AI, I don't know if we all think about it, but it is a huge energy sucker. It takes a lot of energy to be able to run AI. So some of the things that you can do at an organizational level related to consumption. So there are different models that are available. So there's really high-powered models, lower level models. Consider giving the organization accounts that only limit the amount. So instead of doing the 4.5 model, maybe consider doing the 3.5 model. That difference in power is actually something that can make a huge impact. If everybody used the minimum amount of resource when it comes to things like AI, I think that we can all be able to make an impact.
Thank you, Cynthia. I saw supporting nodding across the screen, and Ngozi, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, actually, I had stayed unmuted from the last question, but but I'll go ahead and dive into this one. I do think that it's helpful to help. It's helpful to be able to articulate maybe some of the trade-offs that exist when leaders are faced with decisions around what to do. Whether of course, the last couple of years, the big question has been, are companies going to sort of stay largely remote? Since the pandemic sort of forced a lot of companies to do that, right? And so they've been at the crossroads of, do we stay remote? Do we, call people back on site? Are we going to go hybrid, right? And so just weighing those options and really trying to understand what the cost sort of associated with that is. Oftentimes, leaders tend to look at the financial cost of it. And I think that, what we can do, right, in this space is begin to also cost out the environmental impacts as well, so that when we're looking at sort of the costs and the benefits, there's a more complete picture available to help make a decision.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I'll piggyback a little bit on that, because I know that at least, with publicly traded US companies, in your environmental and social responsibility reports on an annual basis, more and more you're being asked to quantify as an organization what that environmental impact is, whether that's what the company does in and of itself, or even what your vendors are capable of doing. So I think for me, it starts with just being mindful and being intentional about what it is that you want to do. So as leaders are asked to quantify exactly what that environmental footprint, technology footprint looks like within their organizations, and we're starting to see some of that pressure on publicly traded organizations. I think it's really just incumbent upon leaders within an organization to take that step back and think really about, okay, if we employ this type of technology across an employee footprint of 1,000 or 2,000, what does that look like from an environmental impact? So I think it really starts with just being mindful that there is an impact and starting to quantify it, and then being intentional about articulating that to your employee footprint as well. I think as organizations become more mindful about what that technology footprint looks like, what the impact of AI is, how is that impacting the amount of computing power and energy that we're using, I think that gives people an opportunity to be more accountable for how they're using that type of footprint.
I also think it can be a galvanizing force, especially for a global workforce, if you want to get folks to rally around the cause. And so you can have your ESG priorities and your values, and making sure you're being congruent with those as a leadership team, that the stuff you say you care about, you're actually doing stuff about. But there's so many things at the local level. So for example, Shady's part of the world will be completely different from us in the US and the vendors that they use and the initiatives. But you can really use it in a remote environment, to galvanize your workforce around a cause, particularly your Gen Zs, et cetera, who are really going to get, behind this, and using things like volunteer time off and stuff to do things in the local community, but rolling that up. I actually think that there's a few things about remote first that just, from the technology you have to use to keep everyone connected and included and try and create a more equitable experience, but then also using it as a cause that folks can kind of galvanize themselves around, and use it as a kind of motivating function for community, and helping drive more inclusivity in the company as a whole.
I think to add for that, I think one of the challenges that we might go through is convincing the decision makers that sustainability will help the environment and will save some money for you. However, to be honest, you need to invest at the beginning. Speaking about solar cells, for example, speaking about AI systems or AI tracking systems in HR or something, there is some type of investment that you have to put, while the ROI, the return on investment on that, is a bit long-term thing, or not immediate, let's say. And to be honest, this is a challenge when it comes to taking the decision, investing in something
Well, we are, and Jessa, please do keep me honest. I think we are about 15 minutes away from wrapping up this panel conversation. And listening to all of you today and also keeping an eye on the comments, I got an idea to try something. So then the next question is actually a triptych. There are 3 questions in the same question. And here's what I mean. When I go about doing change work in my full-time job, I always tell people change happens when you sit on a 3-legged stool: mindset, skill set, and tool set. And if you do not intentionally place the same amount of focus and energy on all the legs, the chair will be forever wobbly. Therefore, your change will be forever wobbly. So I would like to take each leg at a time. We will talk about mindset, we will talk about skill set, and we will wrap it up with recommending something along the lines of the tool set. When it comes to mindset shifts to move towards sustainable HR technology solutions, which is the shift that you believe would have the biggest return of value when it comes to making these decisions? So what is a mindset shift that you would like to spark and nurture in this area?
So I think a really huge mind shift change that would be very impactful in HR is that I think that we in HR feel like we need to be very technical to have conversations around technology. And that is just simply not true. Like, just us being curious and asking a lot of questions, and then obviously doing our own self-research are really powerful together. So I'll give you an example of this. So I am just like an average, I love tech, so I'm going to say I'm probably a little more curious than others. But I use a lot of different technology across the organizations that I support. So applicant tracking systems, performance management systems, one-way video interview systems, et cetera. And all of these are, if they aren't now, will be AI enabled. So as I've been looking at these tools, I'm looking at them, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. This tool does not have proper accessibility. For example, it doesn't have the ability to see the interview question during a one-way video interview clearly, because there's a contrast issue, because you can see yourself in the background, and it's got white font. It's and more severe things that I'll tell you about from applicant tracking system. Basically anything that has what's called an AEDT, or an automatic employment decision tool. It's where it ranks candidates, as a match to a job. So a candidate might match 97%, another candidate will match 80%. Almost nearly all the tools that I'm working with right now and in conversations with, I'm actually reaching out to these software companies, and you can do this too. I'm saying like, hey, I can't see how you are doing this or calculating this. Hey, I can't calibrate actually what is the requirements for the job, because if it's a software engineer job and I want them to have experience in React and JS, I want that to be weighted 40%. And then I want leadership to be 20%. If you don't have that ability, that is not an AI enabled tool. And it's actually a disservice because it's giving a false positive for candidates, whether they are highly qualified or not qualified. So just inside of that statement itself, you, as the average layperson, HR person, is like, you know what? I can't tell if this system is going to cause disparate impact. I can't tell if this is actually validated, that I am actually raising up the right candidate. And so a lot of the very common systems, I'm going to say that nearly all of them, except two big ones, I actually am in conversations with them and just saying, pushing back and saying, you have to fix this and you have to fix this now. Because almost all of us have used one of these systems that I'm working with. And I just want everybody to be empowered to start this conversation, technical or not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. I'm learning from you right now, so it's super helpful. I do completely concur with what you're saying, and I'll talk about two different lenses, Manola, if I can. One is the mindset piece, but the other way is I would pull this conversation out a little. The mindset piece for me is just like, if you have a brain, you're biased, right? And how can technology help us mitigate that bias? You'll never eradicate it, but it's just the awareness. Things like the SEATS model that NLI uses, or there's a lot of different training you can have for hiring managers, for all of us, and it's just always that. And that's where technology can really help us to just try, and you'll never eradicate it, but to mitigate, to Cynthia's point, and to be able to train the models. The other way I would extrapolate the conversation, I think the frame you mentioned, Manola, is the internal. I actually always think about the stakeholder lens as maybe extrapolating it out a little. And where I go to is business case. So if you want to persuade other folks in your C-suite or your board members, or you need investment and stuff, just go with the business case. And there's a lot of this that makes a lot of sense financially, from a talent perspective, from a diversity perspective. If you want the best people in the world, if you want the best solutions in the world, like, think about it from that lens, rather than the here's the specific issue and we all want to do good in the world. Maybe, but maybe not. But these are mostly for-profit companies. And if that's the case, then make the business case to make it work.
I'll go back to, Suzanne mentioned the kind of internal lens. So I'll go back to kind of that internal HR-based lens, if I can. You know, one of the things that I think about as my career in HR has evolved is that it oftentimes has been about aggregating and collecting more and more information. And so as an HR professional, you have to be this subject matter expert in a variety of different fields. And I think that's been kind of the motivating factor for a number of years. Where I think about AI and other sustainable technology solutions can come into play is to really help you almost free up and relinquish some of that responsibility. You know, you no longer necessarily need to be an expert in a variety of different disciplines and keeping up with the latest changes and nuances with employment laws and regulations. You know, there's technology available to help you with that. And for me, I think that leads to what I think a big mindset shift for some of us is really being able to, number one, let go of some of that level of complexity and allow a technology solution to help you. And number two, going back to what Cynthia said about being curious, is really learning about that new technology and how it can enable you and your teams to do better and higher value work with the organization in mind.
Mm. Thank you. Anything that Ngozi or Shadi, do you want to add?
Well, I was thinking about the some practices that might be helpful applying the concept, and one of the things I just applied like 2 months ago is including KPIs or sustainability related KPIs in our competency framework for everyone. So this is part of the KPIs that all people, let's say core competencies, that all people in the organization will be measured or assessed against by end of the year. And to be honest, this took me like a while to think, should I apply it as a core competency for everyone or leave it optional? And we thought core because we really need everyone to believe in the concept, regardless what job they are doing or what is their job description. And it's working good, especially that some people are resisting the idea. Why sustainability is part of my competency framework that you assessed me against, and it opened the discussion and the door to introduce the concept in more depth. So this is a good practical approach, to be honest, that I just have tried, including the sustainability KPIs and as part of our competency framework indicators.
Yeah, I'd second what everyone has shared so far, especially the point around curiosity really being at the core of the mindset that helps us, really move forward with exploring and adopting great, AI tools. What I have found in terms of helping those around me and helping leaders get really excited about adopting new tools or, sustainability initiatives is, really helping them understand the questions that it can help us answer, or the challenges that it can help us provide solutions for. And so instead of, providing an overview of, here's this cool new tool, I like to think about, here's the challenge that we're having, and here's how this tool can help us, get to a solution, or can help us fill a gap, or can help us answer this question. And suddenly folks get more interested, right? Because it's not just something else that feels daunting and complicated, and some technology tool that a lot of people don't really feel competent enough to navigate. It's now a challenge that the tool just helps us get to, right? It's a more interesting challenge that everyone can really think about and rally around.
Mm. All wonderful, wonderful points. And with 4 minutes left, maybe we can take this time to look into some of the skills that you would invite our audience to put more focus and energy into. So let's go counterclockwise from how we started, and I will pass the e-mic around, and I will ask you, can you just name a skill that you think would help people in the audience when it comes to making sustainable HR tech solutions decisions? And there are extra points available for naming skills outside of the circle of the usual suspects. And also everybody in the audience, if you have any ideas and any suggestions, please do drop them in the chat. So, Ngozi, what would be your skill?
Yeah, I'll say two very quickly. One is getting, and these are not technical, right? So everybody can kind of, wrap their mind around it. One is really seconding Suzanne's point around the business case. Just thinking in terms of how can I explain this using the business case, right? How can I capture executive leaders and use the language and the mission that they're really excited about and that they use to kind of get this on their table, right? To get them invigorated and interested in this thing. I think you're really understanding and learning how to use business case to your advantage, I think is a really great skill. And the other one really is also around learning how to quantify everything that you can, right? I think that then helps us to understand where we could use new AI tools, right? And so, the question that I always think about, no matter what environment I'm in, no matter what I'm talking about, is how can we quantify this? How can we qualify this? How do we measure, for impact? How do we know if we're making a difference? How do we know if we're moving in the wrong direction, right? And so once we start thinking about how do we measure, how do we quantify, how do we collect data, then that gives us great information to then, move from, whether it be a new initiative, whether it be a new tool. Thinking sort of, data minded helps us get there.
Thank you so very much. Carol.
Yeah, I will categorize it as kind of the systems perspective. And by systems, I don't mean technology systems. I'm just thinking about how your initiative, how your technology solution fits into the bigger picture of the overall business. You know, what does this do in terms of our workflow? What does this do from our inputs and outputs? If I were to implement this particular technology solution or fix, what does that impact how does that impact the finance department? How does that impact operations? What are some of those things, the upstream and downstream implications of aligning with and implementing a particular technology solution? So it's taking that step back from your HR point of view and thinking about how this serves the overall organization as well.
Thank you. Cynthia.
Oh my gosh. I don't know how, but it's already been covered. Like my one, it's basically, gaining gaining business acumen, which is kind of encompasses what's been shared so far. And I'm going to go generic though. I'm going to dip into that analytics. So I would say that in my communities, because I am the numbers nerd in my group, I think that a lot of questions I get are actually around analytics. So kind of to what you were saying, Carol and Ngozi earlier, it's like, what are the levers? What's qualitative, like narrative data points, people talking to you about these, and then quantitative, like hard numbers, what should be measured by a hard number. This is an area that is continues to be an area of opportunity. And now, interestingly enough, sorry about the AI plug, but AI is now making it so that folks can go and say like, okay, if I was going to try to analyze this and understand it from these perspectives, from a qualitative and calibrated standpoint, like I need to understand what's more important. Can you help me think through this? This was not available 5 years ago, right? Now HR has this in their hand to be able to start asking these questions, and that's going to overall grow business acumen.
Thank you. Suzanne.
Data literacy. It's a foundation for everything. It gives credibility to the function. It gives you your basis, whether you're talking about, analytics just monthly that you provide to the company or quarterly to the board, whether you're giving insights, whether you're developing a business case, whether you're being predictive. Back to Cynthia's point and Ngozi's point, there's so much more we can do with data. And I think everyone on a people team should be data literate, from me down to the person who's just straight out of university. We all have to lead with data and insights.
Thank you so very much. Shadi.
I'm just confirming on data analytics and data analysis for non-data analysts. This is a very basic knowledge that I'm hoping we can spread about our people, especially newcomers who are new to the organization. We are trying in our organization to apply this concept, help people understand the very basics of data analysis. The difference between data and information, what is descriptive data, what is prescriptive data, how data will help you take decision. And I'm starting with the HR people actually for having this type of mindset of taking HR decision based on information and data-driven decisions, as we call it. So I'm confirming data analysis and data analytics basics that can suit everyone and prepare minds for the higher stage of AI and sustainability and other technology concepts.
Thank you all so very much for being here, panelists, for taking the time and the generosity to share your passion and your energy and your curiosity. Everybody in the audience for being here. And I do hope that you will stay online for the wrap-up panel of our summit, which is all about future in HR tech, and you will be in amazing company. I saw the speakers coming in our backstage space. So stay on, you are in for a treat. And this was just a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I hope I will get to see you again soon. And until then, make sustainable HR tech solutions decisions. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to day 3, the final day of our HR Technology and Digital Transformation Summit. It's lovely to be here with you today. I'm Malvika Jetmalani, founder of Acvis Group, and I'm dialing in from Chicago. All right, this is our final discussion of this summit, so we're going to close out strong. Our topic for today is future trends in HR technology, preparing for the next wave of technological advancements in HR. Now, we'd love to know where you're dialing in from, so please let us know in the comments where you're based. We have a great discussion planned for you today, so Jessa, please bring our panelists on to the screen. Welcome, welcome, panelists. Before we dive into our topic, let's introduce our panelists. So we'll begin clockwise as you appear on my screen, starting with you, Tracy.
All right, awesome. Glad to see you all. Looking forward to our conversation. My name is Tracy Brower. I'm the Vice President of Workplace Insights at Steelcase. My PhD is in the sociology of work, so how we affect our work, how it affects us. I'm a senior contributor with Forbes and Fast Company, and I have written a couple of books. The most recent is The Secrets to Happiness at Work. I have been in HR since I started my career right out of college, so it's been a little while, and adjacent to HR and deeply embedded in HR. And I think I've been part of Hacking HR almost since its inception, so really, really excited to be here with you all.
Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here. I'm Christy Honeycutt. I'm the SVP of Strategy and Execution for a company called Appy here. I have been in recruitment and HR for over 20 years, had a midlife crisis and went into HR tech, all things AI and automation. So excited to be here, share what I know and what I see is coming, and with my wonderful colleagues. So nice to meet everyone.
Is that me? I don't know if it's... Sorry, I don't know how to count or how to move my... hey, everyone, Paco Farias. I'm the CHRO and the CEO of the staffing and recruiting subsidiary of a real estate development company called Shared Community Development Corp here in Houston, Texas. I've been on the HR space for the past 25 plus years. Big enthusiast in new technologies, always the early adopter and always getting in trouble with technology, trying to fix things out. I'm big fan of Hacking HR, trying to participate as much as I can, and I really look forward to this conversation.
Sarah, you're on mute.
So wouldn't be a presentation if I wasn't on mute. So hi, I'm Sarah Woods. I'm the COO for Dockyard. We actually use AI to help other companies build digital products. I started my career in HR over 20 years ago, just like many of my colleagues here. I became the COO of Dockyard simply by taking on additional duties in addition to my HR duties. And so now I do a lot of different things. Obviously, being part of a tech company, we use technology and AI pretty frequently. So it's a regular part of my day. I'm excited to learn from my colleagues and from the attendees as well.
Good afternoon. This is Trent Cotton from Atlanta. I'm the Vice President of Talent and Culture for Hatchworks AI. We help companies unlock their AI value primarily through helping them understand the power of their data. Also do a lot of writing and speaking about AI in HR.
Wonderful. Welcome. What a great group we have here today. We're going to have a great discussion. So we're going to jump right in. We're not going to waste any time. I want to know, how do you think HR jobs will change with the advent of new technology? And before we hear from our panelists, I want to invite everyone listening in to add to the comments section your thoughts. So how do you think HR's role will change? Tracy, we'll start with you, and then others feel free to unmute and add to the conversation as you see fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a great place to start, because I think the changes are going to be really significant. One of the things we know about AI is that it will significantly take tasks. And so there will be a task from this job that AI takes, and a task from that job, and a task from that job. So one of the changes in HR work processes will be shifts in the way that we think about job boundaries, shifts in the way that we think about the work process. So how we reallocate responsibilities, set expectations will be a really big part of the work that we do personally and the work that we help the rest of the organization do. I think another way that our roles will shift in HR is with a huge emphasis on learning and development and growth and stretch and learning and development. And after that, learning and development, because we are going to need to be upskilling constantly, both in terms of our own skills and in terms of empowering and enabling the organization. I think another thing that is going to shift in terms of the HR responsibility is just in terms of the way that we model behavior. Like, we are always critical in influencing, because the number one way people learn is through watching and listening and experiencing other people. And especially HR, people will be watching for how we respond to the new technology. So when we can lean in, when we can experiment, when we can explore, when we can use guardrails and set guardrails appropriately, when we can foster openness, I think that's a big deal. So a third thing is through our modeling, I think will be really big shifts. And I think the other thing is that we are going to be in a position to be emphasizing soft skills. There's like the essential skills, they're really hard skills, we know, but we are going to even more need to make sure that we are emphasizing communication and collaboration and cooperation and relating and articulating and connecting. All of those will be really fundamental in how we think about performance, how we think about learning and development, how we think about even attracting and retaining for those kinds of skills. So those are 4 ways I think the HR role will shift.
If I may, I think it's going to really elevate our HR and talent practitioners in their organizations, because for years, if you think about it, there's often one head of HR and one head of talent, and they're being asked all the time for data and insights and what's going on. And with the mass amount that's coming to them, it's virtually impossible. So if you think about a recruiter that goes through 100 resumes to get to 10, now that can be done in seconds. So it's going to open up a lot more bandwidth for them. It's going to be able to provide them with data and insight that they can roll up to an executive level to be more impactful, so they can be seen, heard, and have a seat at the table. So that's what I'm really excited about with the future of technology that I'm seeing. And I'm hoping that everyone embraces it, because I don't believe it's going to eliminate. I believe it will elevate those that use it. So I'm hoping for curiosity in the future of tech.
Well, I would say as well, it's already here. So, just think about very easily, whenever you started your career, it doesn't matter, 5 years, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, whenever that was, versus today, even a year from today, and it already has changed. The thing is, how fast can you adapt to that change? How early can you go in and start testing things? Because it will keep changing in front of you. It's just more about, how are we embracing that change? And as you all said, of course, the low-hanging fruit is the menial tasks that we all have to do, and those are being automated. But then that starts really putting together, if you do any of those deep search on any of those LLMs, they really help you to accelerate research, and then you can come up with big insights on things 10 times faster. So the insights and the aha moments, I truly believe, are going to become exponential. And that way, we can all transform our roles to much more on the business partnership side, much more on the strategy side, and bringing back the human side, by the way, bringing back the H in HR.
All right. So next question, I'm going to start with you, Trent, on this one. As we have AI and emerging technologies automating tasks and sort of reshaping entire roles, how can we prepare our workforce, not just within our organizations, but the broader workforce for this shift?
The first thing is we need to start having those hard conversations now. And to me, the level of irony that sometimes whenever I'm working with organizations, HR is the last one to have the conversations with HR people about how their jobs are going to evolve. And I'll go so far as to say, I know you and I have talked about this offline, but to me, that's malpractice. You know, we need to be eating our own dog food. We need to be looking first at the HR organization and seeing how is it going to change? What are going to be those shifts? And then sitting down and having very real discussions with our team members and say, this is where we see the job going. Here's some gaps that I see. You can do the job, but here's some career trajectory or some career investment that you need to make in order to get ready for that shift. I think that, you know, one of the things in our shop is that, you know, we did the pivot to AI in the last 3 years have been kind of like a blur. I think it was end of 2023, beginning of 2024. But a lot of our people are software developers, like kind of the traditional software shop. So we are actually in the process now of building out an AI university. And, you know, one of the changes that I kind of see is L&D and talent are no longer going to be separate divisions. It's going to collapse into one, because you're bringing someone in, you should be responsible for their development all the way through. So the whole recruiting, once you say, I do, I'm done, I think that's going to go away as HR starts to look to consolidate. But what we're doing is we're going in and we're seeing what are the tools, what are the processes, what are the areas that are going to be impacted. And rather than going and purchasing a lot of stuff from like LinkedIn or Coursera or whatever your LTS of choice is, there's a ton of stuff out there on YouTube. There's some crazy people doing some amazing things out there that you can go and gank the video, create some easy content and deploy it and put it out into the hands of your team members. But I think the first step is having those hard conversations, because if you just continue to put content out there, they'll think, I need to get there another day. But if you say you're a full stack developer today, in 4 months, we don't need full stack developers. We need the T-shaped model. And here's what a T-shaped model looks like. Here's some training. Here's some things that I want to get you exposed to, and then managing them to it.
I think another way that we can prepare that workforce is when we emphasize plenty of communication. I think neurologically we want certainty, and people crave to know exactly what's coming. And of course we can't provide certainty, but the more clarity we can provide, I think the better. What do we know? What are we still wondering? In which direction are we going? What's the vision? What will be the jobs that we think might shift? What are the places where we expect not to see shifts? We wouldn't want to share all of that in the way that I just said it. I kind of just said it. We want to be really sensitive to people in terms of what might be coming. But I think more clarity on more elements of change is going to be a really important thing, because we know that there's a lot of fear around AI and how work will change. That's pretty consistent with what we've seen in the historical past as well. So that's the second thing I think we can do to help prepare people, is to foster development that gives them a sense of resilience, empowerment, help people think through how to respond so that people feel more empowered and less disempowered and less fearful of the unknown. And that might especially have to do with leadership development, so that leaders can kind of check in with people and be aware of how people are doing and where they might be unsure or uncertain, and give leaders skills in creating the conditions for stability and continuity and connections. And the last thing I think we can do, not the last, but the next thing I think we can do is to really foster experimentation. Some of the best research on AI says that we can create and innovate in a central, kind of organized, systematic way in organizations. But the innovation will actually go faster if we can have people trying and testing and experimenting in lots of different places, with guardrails to protect IP, with guidelines to make sure that we're doing that appropriately. But really, if we can foster that experimentation, foster that culture of exploration, that will help people feel empowered, and it will also help us innovate faster as organizations. So those three things I think we can do.
I would say with what Tracy said, and just kind of piggybacking off that, that's something we actually did here. We have a lot of software engineers, and they were very excited to dive in this. So we actually proactively put together some guardrails and some testing I guess, confines, and a central repository of learnings, and then kind of said, go out and geek out on different tools and technologies and let us know kind of what you're liking, what you're not, because we're going to be investing in different tools. We want to, we've all rolled out something that nobody wanted to use, and then 10% people used it, and then you ended up with this huge line item on your budget every year that wasn't really worth it. So we've really kind of empowered them we have some parameters around, obviously, IP and client data and things like that being used, but we've kind of been like, go have fun, go play with this. So it has been something that our teams have really enjoyed doing and diving into and trying things out. And then it's also that peer learning from each other. So it's less, here's this bulleted slide deck I'm going to go through with you, and more, they get to share ideas and collaborate, especially we're in a fully remote environment. So it makes it a little bit easier. You may have people that are 8 time zones apart being able to, have this kind of shared language and excitement about something. So I would say that's a great point you brought up.
I love what Tracy and Sarah said. I think it's important to find your curious employees and your curious partners, right? Because when you're curious together, you uncover really great things. And I know one of the things that we do at Appy here, when we approach our internal teams, but our clients as well, is we ask them, what is it that you hate doing right now? What takes the most amount of your time? Because a lot of these people are beginning their journey, although, obviously it's been around for a while. We've been using this for a while, whether we know it or not, but bringing their mindfulness and their focus forward to kind of see the art of the possible within the new technology, I find helps gain buy-in quicker. And then also identifying that internal champion, both internal on your side, but also on your client side or whoever you're engaging with, is really helpful. And then giving them permission to try and fail is super fun. And then sharing what their favorite tools are. And I think when you make it fun and you engage the curiosity of the human, great things happen.
Couldn't agree more. And I'm reading some of the comments here from people who are listening in. And Roy says, HR will deal with AI bias, digital privacy, ethical workforce automation. Companies might employ algorithm auditors to ensure that AI-driven decisions like promotions or terminations are fair and unbiased. Digital identity managers will help people maintain personal and professional reputations in an era where everything is tracked. Interesting insights. And then Nicole says, we in HR are going to have to figure out how to get really good at evaluating learning agility, creativity, curiosity, adaptability at scale, a historically sticky problem. And then Rita says, the rise of technology seems to be driving organizations to become more people-centric. That's something we've been talking about, and hopefully that trend continues. So speaking of being people-centric, Sarah, I'll throw this one to you. How do you think emerging tools are improving the employee experience, especially in a world now where so many of us are remote or hybrid?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's been some concerns, at least some that I've read, that this will take the human out of human resources, right? That we'll just all be kind of faceless, droids behind laptops. And I think this actually, by taking on some of those more tactical things, like having, a knowledge base or an HR chatbot, they don't necessarily need to talk to me to know what's our pay schedule for the year, right? They can go and find that for themselves. So I think a lot of the self-service things are going to help people find information when they need it, especially in a remote or hybrid environment where you may have people, again, 8 time zones away from each other, right? I think one of the other things is the learning and development we talked about. People learn as many different ways as there are people. There are many different ways to learn, right? And making everybody show up at a certain kind of core hour to kind of go through slides with other people they may not see on a regular basis and may not feel comfortable asking questions of. I think that AI allows us to deliver upskilling and training in a way that is, 1, more useful to the employee themselves, 2, more comfortable, 3, allows them to really work within a schedule that works for them. So we may have some core hours that we all work, but it may flex on either side, depending on where you happen to be. And forcing somebody at the end of their day when all they want to do is grab something to eat and like veg on their couch and being like, by the way, now you have to pay attention and ask intelligent questions and, be quizzed on something. I think this really helps improve their experience by meeting them where they are and not forcing them to kind of meet us where we are. And that's not to say that we haven't been trying to be intentional about that. I think it's just more, we're obviously restricted to it. We aren't up 24/7, although I think that might be an expectation of HR from time to time, is that we're everywhere and we're always available. And I think this really helps meet people where they are. And then I would say it allows us, again, like I said, with the kind of more tailored approach to the individuals and how they learn. Maybe you do something where you deliver kind of more of a video, like to Trent's point earlier, and hold small group office hours at a couple different times that allow for question and answer, or small group workshops, or something to that effect that allows us to maybe blend the two. So I think there's just a lot more flexibility in having what feels like a very personalized experience on the L&D side, as well as letting people be like, I don't want to talk to a human today. I just want to know, what's my pay schedule, and being able to do that and not have to wait for somebody to get back to them. So I think those are some really key points that AI are really just going to free up for us, or should be freeing up for us now if you've got it implemented in your systems.
If I can go after, I'm an optimist and I'm a realist too. So there are certain parts of HR that people hate. It's like when you have to give them the bad news, it's like, oh, you have to go to HR's office. Oh my God, you're in trouble, blah, blah, blah. So all of those, I'm in trouble, or negative experience, or problem solving when someone has hit a wall. Just think about for a second how AI and several other emerging tools can help us start move a lot of that stuff out of the way. So you already started saying that, Sarah. It is actually fascinating, because we can start getting some of that black cloud of some of the HR functions out, because, you can help out in doing many different things in a much more streamlined way. And then, I know I'm repetitive, but bring back the HR and HR, because that way you can have much more meaningful and value-added conversations with people. You can really practice the coaching that still, yes, I've seen a lot of AI coaches hallucinating, and they're kind of getting there, but still not where they need to be. Maybe they will be, but maybe it's a crutch right now, and maybe they will become much better than us tomorrow. But today they aren't. So, all of the coaching, all of the nuances, all of the things that you can detect on a talent and the HRVP compensation, most of the HR functions can go way more sophisticated and value add, because then people are going to start getting a lot of that negativity out, and you can bring back much more of the value add.
Great. And as I look at the comments here, Roy talks about how employee experience will become hyper-personalized, and HR may use biometric or neural data to measure employee happiness and productivity. I think from what I remember, the EU AI Act prohibits use of sentiment data, but others don't, as far as I know. Roy also says, personalized work environments, AI-driven tools could adjust workplace settings, so lighting, temperature, digital interfaces, to optimize productivity based on employees' current mood and health status. So very interesting there. And Claire says technology should enable us to become more employee-centric, more individualized. So same as Roy on that hyper personalized experience, more individualized with employee benefits and development, and also faster to reach people in their moment of need. I love that. So speaking of helping people in their moments of need, the next question I have is, what do we think HR's role is in ensuring that people are not left behind when their work is transformed or replaced by technology? And Christy, we'll start with you on this one.
That's a great question. And I love I love what Francisco said a moment ago. I think that, in my opinion, technology is here to aid the human in being more human. So we all do a lot of work that we don't like or we dread. For me, it's expenses. It's the worst part of my day. I do not want to do expenses. It takes me 10 times what would take somebody else that likes that 5 minutes. So I think as we start to look at how we can elevate what we're doing, it gives the curious people, the people that want to take control of their career, it gives them an opportunity to be more human and lean in a more emotional, intelligent, and EQ way, which we all need in this world. And so my personal claim to fame and mission is to humanize everything we do with the help of AI and not be fearful of it. So I think it's a couple of things. HR needs to foster their people, and not just look, everything's not HR's job. It's, it's not your job to be the mom and dad of everybody, but it is your job to guide the organization in each different thing and say, how are you going to use it? How can I support? What are your people saying? I think we've got to go back to the people and understand where their pain points are and how we can surprise and delight them and get them engaged and get them curious and want to learn more. So it's kind of it's a top-down approach to help encourage each of the silos within the organization, and then HR kind of have an overview of it. But again, it's not their responsibility. But I think just making it available and guiding in the right direction is going to be good. But the biggest thing for me that I hear is just fear. I'm going to lose my job. We want to get everyone encouraged to understand your work and what you're doing and where the opportunities are and where we can lift and shift and make it more human. I focus more in the attraction and talent phase of the work. And for me, what I hear from recruiters is, oh my gosh, I didn't spend 10 hours going through resumes or trying to figure out this is written by AI. It prompted everybody I need to talk to right here. They meet the qualifications, they're in the location, the pay, everything that I need is right here. And now I can have that conversation with that person and make sure that this is the right fit for them and it's the right fit for us. So in essence, you're bringing on a better culture by utilizing the AI and taking some of that pain point away. And that's my point of view, but I'd love to hear my colleagues' point of view as well.
I think a really big deal too is just to be really clear with people if we know that their jobs are going to be changing. We have some changes going on in our IT group, and we were in a position where we could say, everyone will have a job. Your job may shift, but everyone will have a job. Now, I know that's not always the situation, but that's an example of clarity, right? Or if we know someone's job is going to change, it's just so helpful and empowering to have people in the loop on that conversation and able to anticipate. And it actually reduces fear because now we're being transparent and people don't have to wonder. Uncertainty is one of the things that we're most fearful of, right? The unknown and the uncertainty. I think the other thing we can do is I think we can really, really guide the organization to be intentional about how we use AI. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And there are so many things that AI will be able to do and efficiencies and all the great things. But I think we want to be intentional about preserving the human experience. We love to be creative. We love to connect. We love to be curious. And so those are some of the things that we might think about preserving at the same time we're bringing AI in to help us with the things that people don't love to do. I was talking with the CHRO. I had a presentation recently on talent attraction, retention, the talent shortage. And she was saying, oh my gosh, we've got this organization full of engineers. We've got lots and lots and lots of engineers in the organization. And they came to me recently and said, we love what we do. So much of our work can be automated, but we don't want to hit the button. We want to do the work. Like, we went to school, we like this, we're passionate about it. There's elements of our work we don't love, but please don't take the part that we do love. So we know over time we need to be open to shifts and changes, but I think we can also be super intentional, not to spread AI like peanut butter on everything, but to be really selective about where we're using it and how we preserve the human experience. And we're in a unique position to both advocate and educate around that.
And Christy, to your point about what is and isn't HR's job, Rachel says in the comment, comments. Maybe our HR job descriptions should say what we aren't instead of what we are. You and me both wish that were true, Rachel. And Jessica says, the more information is given, the less anxiety and sense of uncertainty people will experience, right? So to your point, Tracy. So my next question is going to be for you, Paco. What is the one thing that you're looking forward to in terms of new HR technology? You mentioned you are an optimist and a realist, and this is a moment when we need optimists more than ever. So what are you looking forward to?
Well, I've been so inspired already by you all, but I was thinking, why don't we call the role instead of HR? By the way, I'm not a fan of the term HR. Resources, it's always in the back of my mind. So why don't we call ourselves human capability enablers or something like that, right? I just came up with that. And I'm going to TM it. No, but the point is, something like that, because I think that's where we're heading into. So these technologies should help us augment our capability. So what I'm looking forward to is, I was really thinking about this. It's been fascinating for me. I started working in very big companies that already had a bunch of access to tools and resources and all that stuff. And now I have been gravitated towards startups that don't have a single penny. So you really have to think through on what investments you make. And if we really think about our audience as well, not all of them work in this set of companies that have a lot of money, right? They have to work in different places where there has to be a very good trade-off of the technologies they're playing with versus the output that they're getting from. So the adoption to get into the new trends technologies always takes time. So some people are already using Eightfold or whatever that is to automate a bunch of sourcing tasks or things like that. But there's quite a few of us in the audience that are still doing that manually, right? So it's going to get somewhere there. What I look forward is there's now several tools that are starting to incorporate AI on a more comprehensive manner, that they're trying to test it out in different features so that people can start to get the adoption on a much more natural level. And I'm loving that. So as an example, utilizing maybe sourcing in your ATS, and it starts showing some hints to you in a way that you don't feel that the whole thing is just taking the whole thing from you, but that is enabling you to move much faster. So several of the HRCMS or ATSs or any of the other systems out there that are starting to integrate into your human experience and into their interface experience AI in such a way that allows you to interact with it faster and easier. I can guarantee to you those are going to be the ones that are going to get more adopters, and those are going to be the ones that survive. Think about it. You have to pay a lot of money for these tools. I think it's time to become the HR moment right now, and technology moment starting to become like the streaming moment when they went after cable. When cable went down, everybody started getting all of these different streaming services, and then you came up to a point where you have so many you didn't know which ones to cancel. Right now, that's what's happening to us in HR technology. Think about it. You have to have all of these other Frankentech, disparate technologies together, and it becomes complicated. Some of them are starting to, be integrators and really starting to get and understand that they don't need to get too sophisticated. They need to get to a point that is very useful. So usefulness over a crazy amount of features. So I'm looking forward to those technologies that are very useful and intuitive rather than very complicated and you need to read 10 manuals to get them and get them going, because those are the ones that really help us enable ourselves and our users.
Can I just say I love Frankentech, the fact that I'm going to use that, Frankentech. So an organization I was most recently with, we had 5 systems. 3 did the exact same things. 1 was built internally and was not sustainable or scalable because the person left. 1 had like 1 feature we liked. So I love what you're saying, because a lot of tech up to this point is it's all or nothing. This is our stack, you get it. And what I'm seeing, which I love, is That's no longer applicable. If you need this, we can plug it. Like Appy here, we plug anything that you want, we can plug in, we're API. So I think that that's a really good point, and people should look at your Frankentech and just kind of analyze it. Great point.
And I love that comparison to cable as well. I'm gonna steal that one. So we have 5 minutes left. I wish we could keep this discussion going because it's such a rich one, but thank you so much for your insights, everyone in the comments. Thank you for your participation. So my last question to you all is, what is the one lesson you've learned related to HR technology, and or what is the one piece of advice you would give to our listeners about HR tech? And we'll go in reverse order this time, starting with you, Trent.
Get in there and play with it. For the longest time, I had this issue, like whenever I look at code, my brain shuts down. I'm a very logical person, minor statistics, finance, so I love logic, but I see backspace and all this, and my brain just says, yeah, we're not doing this. So for the first part of that wave, I stayed out of it, but then I forced myself, there's got to be other things that are out there. And to Paco's point, I work in a high growth, I'm not in the huge company enterprise company, and there's some benefits when you're at an enterprise. You can go and buy all the sexy toys. But the other benefit now with AI on the smaller side is you can build your own sexy toys. You just have to go out there and do it. And believe it or not, there's enough no-code stuff out there that even if you're like me and you don't like code, but you know that you need an MVP, you can actually go out there and get something to an MVP to be able to show a developer and say, this is what I'm trying to do. And they can go back on the back end, take that code, and then enhance it and actually getting it work. So that's something that I have learned. And now I can't turn my brain off on all the different things that I want to build.
I would say similar to Trent on the leaning in part, but this is also something where if the mindset is this is terrifying and it's going to take my job, is that I view this as an opportunity. I think I don't know how frequently there's an article out that says, HR doesn't have a seat at the table. They're not considered this partner with the C-suite and all of that, that this is giving you that data. It's giving you those insights to be able to really drive business performance and really show that, because you're getting to free up different tasks that you're not able to do. Plus, you're also able to use these tools to compile and come up with different data analytics that you always had the raw data for, but never had the time to compile and use that. So this is, I think, an opportunity really to pivot the overall function as a whole in terms of how it's viewed, how it's seen. I've been lucky that I've not worked necessarily at companies that thought we were and I use this term, but it's the party planning policy pushers or policy police. I've not been in those organizations, but I know people that have, and I think that this is a real opportunity to really kind of pivot maybe the perception a little bit in some of the other companies. I also would echo what Trent and Paco have said, that I really like that it seems that these tools have really democratized the accessibility to being having the enterprise level impact on your employees on the scrappy bootstrap startup budget. That I like that we're able to kind of compete at almost an equal level, if not more advanced. I've worked at a large enterprise company, and getting something processed and approved is a very lengthy process, whereas more startups tend to be much quicker at, let's give it a shot. So I would say really lean into it and embrace it. I think fear is going to be your enemy in this I guess, transformation.
Yeah, well, I mean, super insightful, and I'm already going to do a bunch of research on a bunch of these tools, but keeping it very short and simple, just, stop analysis paralysis. One of the craziest things that can happen, we are actually all overwhelmed with all of the tools available at our disposal that are now out there. There's a bunch of free tools and a bunch of reports. Start with one, understand it, play with it, lose the fear. Trust me, you're not going to break don't change all of your compensation of your company and break it, but you can break some things. There's playgrounds, there's sandbox environment. So get out of your own fear and just start experimenting and try MVPs, as Trent said. There's so many things you can do, but start one piece at a time, but do progress, because if not, you get into, analysis paralysis, and you can get into amenability, and that will not allow you to become a faster embracer. So you can do it. Go and learn one tool today.
So I know we're at the top of the hour, so I'll go fast. I would say I'm in sales and in execution. So what I would say is don't believe the hype. Everybody is saying the same thing. I have been to lots of conferences, and what I hear from my HR colleagues is, how do I tell the difference? Everybody's saying the same thing. Ask the questions, understand the difference between AI, automation, AI agents, all the terminologies, find someone you trust, network, reach out to these people on this call. We will help you. Just don't believe the hype.
Good, Hans. And I would say, in the vein of experimentation and exploration, I think a great idea is to try it in your personal life. Like, use AI in all the ways to plan your next vacation, or plan a meal based on the 3 things in your refrigerator, or, make your presentation in the style of Yoda speaking. Like, give some tries on a low pressure, low risk, kind of fun personal side. And then it makes it that much easier to bring in on the professional side.
Thank you so much. What great insights. Thank you, panelists, for sharing your time and your knowledge with us. Everyone in the comments, thank you for your participation and energy. And last but not least, thank you to Jessa, Sneha, and the rest of the Hacking HR team for this incredible summit and bringing us all of this amazing content. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you in May for the Workplace Wellbeing and Mental Health Summit. You're going to want to tune into that one. Be well, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.